Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is episode 23. Good layoff. How you going, Mike?
Bogues, doing all right, brother. Just it's playoff central, so just trying to sort of navigate through this, and then new firings and hirings in the NBA. It's a pretty interesting time.
Yeah, can't wait to give our picks that will be wrong shortly.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, the injuries have played their part, and watching a game right now, which we'll discuss shortly, in Milwaukee and Brooklyn, and James Harden just left with a retweak of his hamstring, so that could change the way the series goes as well. But let's just get into them. Brooklyn, Milwaukee. I mean, we both picked Brooklyn to win this series for obvious reasons, but how do you see this Harden injury changing the dynamic? Do you think it gives the Bucks a chance to, obviously it gives them a better chance, but do you think they still have, you know, the team to beat Brooklyn in a 7-game series?
I mean, Milwaukee was going to compete either way. I thought it would be a close series. That, you know, as good as Brooklyn is and how much firepower they have offensively and how hard they play it, you knew Milwaukee was going to give them something, especially, you know, they got a good cast of players in the top 8, and you thought it was going to be semi close either way. But I mean, obviously, without James Harden, this is going to be a lot. Obviously, a lot closer series than even I thought it was even before the injury happened. So I think Milwaukee, look, it's a perfect opportunity to take advantage, and you know how these injuries go. It changes your trajectory in fucking 2 seconds, and you know you can never plan for it. It just comes out of the blue. What do you think, Bogues? What's your take?
I think it'll be closer. I think it goes 6 or 7 regardless of the injuries. I think Brooklyn's still, you know, they're gonna get a game or two where, you know, Durant or Kyrie have 40 or 50 in this series. They're gonna have 1 or 2 of those games which they'll win. So I think they have enough in that front. But what I've been interested watching in this, at least game 1, is Blake Griffin. He's had a phenomenal impact with being the utilities guy on this squad. His role obviously is diminished compared to what he was with Detroit and the Clippers. And I kind of spoke about this months ago when they first got him, and we had that debate about whether he has any athleticism left. I think now, you know, his usage is down. He's not called upon to score the ball. He just dove on a loose ball earlier in this game, which is live right now as we record. He's trying to be that utilities guy, and I think it's a good role for him, and I think he's done a good job with it. And if they get him to provide that, and Jeff Green comes back from injury a bit more healthy, DeAndre's input if he's needed, and the young fella Claxton, I think they've still got a good mix of role players to beat up Giannis in that paint, and that's what it's going to come down to. If they can just kind of not let Giannis have those 40, 10, and 8 nights, I think they'll wrap the series up pretty easily. But if Giannis has those nights, it's going to be pretty interesting. Yeah,
you know, with Griffin, I talked to Rondo a lot about, you know, later in his career, what he's been doing coming off the bench, and you know, he sort of really likes it. He likes it. It's better on his body, and he hasn't been ravaged with injury like Blake has throughout his career. So, you know, with the lesser role, the lesser usage, the lesser minutes that he's used to, I think it's really good for him. In the lesser role, he doesn't have to do as much. And then he'll give you every few games, he can give you a really good outing, you know, as far as usage is concerned. So it'll be interesting, like you said, that you can't let Giannis go nuts. You just got to you can't let anybody explode, and especially in this series, and with Holiday or Middleton, you know, or Greek Freak. Like, you gotta just keep people a little bit in check, and they have a really good chance still of winning the series. But yeah, I mean, you know, they're still a well-oiled machine, Brooklyn. Like, they've got, you know, next man up mentality, and I think that they got enough to win the series. It'll be interesting, man. Like, they can't really afford much more though on the injury front. So it'll be, you know how it is at this time of year. Everybody's banged up. So it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of games in a short amount of time too, usually every other day, at least in the first, second round, and then it kind of slows down a little bit. But with, you know, factoring in travel as well, I think that'll be one of the better series in the second round. We have after that in the East, Atlanta, Philly. What do you see there?
Same thing. Injuries sort of, you know, just the injury stuff, it kills. You know, Embiid with the knee. You know, this is going to be a huge thing for Philly. Like, they've got some firepower, obviously, without him, with Tobias, and, you know, Seth Curry has done well, and, you know, Ben Simmons can give you some offense here and there. But it'll be interesting if he can't go, what they do and how they sort of, you know, obviously Dwight Howard will play, and they've got some other guys who could play some minutes, and Phil play small. But without Joel Embiid, it'll be tough. It'll be tough. I still think Philly could beat Atlanta, but Atlanta's on a roll though. Like they're feeling it. They're confident. You know how important confidence is in the NBA. Like Trae Young, Bogdanovich, all those guys are sort of going hot at each other. I still think Philly could squeak this one out without Embiid. I remember with the Lakers in 10, Andrew Bynum had the sort of a torn meniscus, and he was sort of limited what he can do. And if it wasn't for Perkins tearing his knee up in Game 6, Boston was going to take that series pretty easily going back to LA. But I think that Embiid, if he does play, he's going to be hampered by this thing. It's going to be a tough series going forward. I think they could still squeak through Atlanta. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree with you on the Embiid front. I think the thing I liked about Philly and why I thought they probably had a chance to at least push Brooklyn or Milwaukee, whoever they face, even Atlanta, is they're the only team out east that has a true big man that can really demand a double team on the block. And Embiid's had an MVP caliber year. I still think Philly get through this series. I think I base it on they have a lot of length to throw at Trae Young, and I think he's he's still gonna get his, but I think he's gonna have to work much harder than he did against New York. You got Matisse Thybulle will have a shot at him, Danny Green will have a shot at him, Ben Simmons will have a shot at him. That's a three-headed defensive monster on the perimeter with length, smarts, basketball IQ. And they're all rated pretty highly as defenders. So I think that's where the series is going to be won. The role players, if Atlanta to have any chance, your Bogdanoviches, even Capella had a great series against New York. He needs to continue that. The role-playing guys, the second, third, fourth string guys have to have big series. And I guess that's not rocket science. That makes sense in most series. But I just don't think Trae Young is going to have 40 on a high shooting clip throughout the series. I think if he's hitting 30, 40 points in certain games, I think it's gonna be a grind for him to get there. And then my concern is what toll does that take later on in the series? If it does go, 5, 6, or 7, I think, Trae's just going to be worn out. And that's kind of why, even without Embiid, I think they can still salvage a playoff series win against Atlanta.
Yeah, I think, Atlanta, New York and Philly, comparing the two defensively, I think obviously Thibodeau gets the edge over Doc as far as how they coach defense as a team. As far as what they brought to Trae defensively as a team and rotations and just being prepared on the defensive side. But they don't have the individual defenders that Philly has, and it's going to be a lot tougher. Like you saw it with the Clippers in Dallas, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, like the difference between having Beverly and Jackson on Doncic and then having a steady diet of Kawhi and Paul George on Doncic. It's sort of, when you have those long-arm defenders that are wired for defense like a Simmons and Thybulle, I just think it's a lot tougher, like you said, to get those shots up. It's, you're looking at a lot more length, a lot more size, a lot more just sort of wiring for defense. It's a lot tougher, rather than having a good defensive team that you're facing without the individual defenders that those guys have. So,
no doubt.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. You hit on the head. And I think, you referenced Doncic. Even in this Brooklyn-Milwaukee game, PJ Tucker guarding Durant's done a pretty good job. But look, those players are still going to get theirs every now and then, and they're still going to give you a 40 or 50 ball. But it's that, like you said, that length of, hey, I've got by Kawhi, but he's kind of rear contest, and he can get to a couple of my shots in the rear contest, whereas a Reggie Jackson probably can't, or a smaller guy. And I think that length is why I picked Philly in that series. And I hope Embiid can get healthy. I just don't see how playing on a torn meniscus in the playoffs that he won't be healthy throughout. I don't think.
Bogues, like I said, I'll go back to the Bynum thing again. I remember talking to Kobe about it, and he goes, "Mike, he can't move, but he's still effective, but he can't move." And they had garbage after that to throw in, to back up Bynum. And I think Embiid, I don't know what he'll do, injection, whatever, witch doctor. I don't know what they're going to throw at him. Mr. Miyagi, putting that green stuff on his knee. Like, I don't know what they're going to throw at him to get him healthy. But, it'll be interesting. think it'll be too difficult to really make a huge impact on the series. Now, good thing they have Dwight Howard. I don't know how many people actually said that in the last few years, but thank goodness they do have him, because he does give you, he does give you some good minutes and solid. Obviously, they're going to miss his offense, and I think it's that firepower that's probably not going to get him to the finals. Though it could probably get him to Atlanta, but that knee, I can't. I'm no doctor. I'm a doctor of bullshit and fucking cholesterol. I don't know anything else about sports medicine, about how that's going to be impacted. I just can't see him really being an impact the rest of the playoffs with that fucking knee.
Well, we saw that happen, to Anthony Davis, which we'll move on now to Phoenix and Denver. But just touch on that Lakers-Phoenix series, we saw what, you and I spoke in a few group chats that we had. As soon as Davis was announced that he did a groin or an adductor, however they worded it, and I think I put in the chat, they said he's day-to-day, and I wrote, there's no way you're day-to-day with a groin or adductor, because I'm no doctor neither, but as an athlete, I know your adductor and your groin, it's connected up to your core system, your back, your hips, everything gets thrown out of whack. And he tried to come back, which was interesting, and he was basically useless out there because of that injury. You as soon as he had to make a hard pivot and then try to jump real quick to block that shot, he tweaked it straight away. And I think that's the thing you worry about with an Embiid. Now, I think a meniscus isn't as restricting to an extent as an adductor, but it's pain threshold and it's movement. Your reaction to move laterally or burst might be a little bit slower than it usually is. And in an NBA game, if you lose a bit of your effectiveness or quickness by a millisecond, you're getting blown by. So I totally agree. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see. Dwight Howard has had a fantastic last 2 years, I think. The Lakers was a great role for him, and he's had a similar role with Philly. So they've got an insurance policy there, a guy that has done it before and played at a high level and arguably could be in the Hall of Fame. That's not here or there. Some people say yes, some people say no. So a very good caliber player, but that scoring on the block for Philly is just going to really be interesting how they get those points back, especially with, those offensive lineups we talk about are great, Matisse Thybulle and Ben Simmons, but then the elephant in the room in that lineup is who's getting you a bucket. You're basically relying on Seth Curry to drop 30 for you, whereas I think he's better as a second, third option off double teams, wide open threes. So anyhow, Phoenix, Denver, what do you see in that series?
Bogues, I completely bet against anything Phoenix related for no reason at all except fucking I'm a moron. But I'm just going to continue with it, because, hey, look, if you're fucking the Michael Jordan of being a fucking complete moron, you might as well go with it. I'm going to go with Denver over Phoenix. Everyone says Jamal Murray. They can't do it without Jamal Murray, blah, blah, blah. Jamal Murray did unbelievably last year in the bubble. This year, obviously put up 21 and 4. He was effective, but they just sort of, it's a next man up mentality for them. Aaron Gordon really has been effective for them, in that role. Michael Porter Jr. has really taken a next step in his sort of development. And, Monty Morris and Campazzo, those guys play hard as hell. And then obviously with Jokic, what he's doing, I still think it'll be too much for Phoenix. But again, Jamal Murray does give him that punch a little bit more offensively. But I'm telling you, those guys play hard as hell. And, Michael Malone's got those guys going. I still think they can get by Phoenix. What do you think?
That's a tough one. I think the Murray point that you just made, not the beauty of that injury, but the silver lining is now instead of ISO to Murray, they're just throwing it to Jokic a whole lot more. So it's actually not a bad thing because now Jokic is getting an extra 10-15% usage that he usually doesn't get. So that's been interesting to watch, and I think you probably can't find a better option, especially late in the shot clock or demanding double teams, finding the right the right pass out of double teams. He's done just such a fantastic job of that throughout his career, but the last playoff series was unbelievable. I don't know, man. I'm kind of kind of scared to bet against Phoenix again. We messed up the coach of the year. We're bet against them at all stops because you just kind of thought Phoenix last season, they're probably just lucky to be there, the bubble, the coronavirus, but I think they have a chance. But the one thing I read, which was interesting, DeAndre Ayton made some comments today or yesterday about that he has, Jokic is the one big in the league that he's always struggled against. Now, I'm not sure you want to make that public, but he did. I kind of like it in a way. He's giving himself some motivation that he needs to step up. And that is a concern of what does Phoenix do just to stymie Jokic, because, coaches will draw up, should we double him? But that you just can't double that guy because he's going to get a feet set wide open shot for someone as soon as you double. And if that's what you want to give up, that's a pretty bad poison to give up early in games. So if I had to pick, I might go with Monty. I'd go 4-3 Phoenix, just based on Chris Paul's shoulder is a bit of a concern, but Phoenix just have some sort of old school East Coast, Eastern Conference grittiness, toughness about him. I love the way Jay Crowder's playing. He's just, no nonsense, just hard hat and talking shit and just not afraid to mix it up with whoever. I think he's been huge for them. Devin Booker had obviously a great closeout game against the Lakers. So I'll go Phoenix 4-3 just so we can be opposite.
With Jokic, I would just single him. Just fucking let him kill you, because he will. I'd rather him just kill me and limit his passing a little bit and just do his thing. But once you start getting Porter cutting and Gordon cutting on spot ups and Millsap and, the point guards are cutting off the post and all that shit, Jokic is a fucking problem. And that whole thing Ayton said, don't worry about it, because 28 motherfuckers said the same thing. Because Jokic is giving everybody a fucking problem. You could have Wilt Chamberlain, Walton, Olajuwon, and Ewing in this fucking all in a one, and this fucking guy would do what he does. So I think it's gonna be a great series. It'll be a grinded out. I think it'll be a grinded out series, to be honest. And two teams that sort of play sort of that style. They're both tough. They both have, they have a lot of weapons. They have floor spaces. I want to see Bridges. I want to see, on the other side, Bridges, Crowder, those guys. Cam Payne has played well. So it'll be a fun series, I think. I think it'll be, a fun one to watch.
It's kind of the complete opposite of the series Denver just went through. So that's the other adjustment that Denver's going to have to make. They've gone from, Portland, which we've laughed about, played no defense. Denver are okay defensively, not great. To now, Phoenix coming from the Lakers series, which was a grind-out series, generally under around about 100 points a game. Now, it's going to be that chess match of, does Monty want that in the 90s if possible, and does Denver want that in the 110s? It's going to be the push or pull of who wins that. And your point on Jokic, I got a friend of mine, Marco, shout out to Marco, Serbian guy. He's obviously a Denver fan because of Jokic, and we've discussed this at length. I said, I would almost let Jokic have 50. I think Jokic is his most dangerous when he has a 35, 14, and 11 line. If he has a 50 or a 48 and 5 and 5, I think you got a better chance to win that game, because those 14 assists are his usually either for layups, like you said, Gordon slashing, backdoors, Porter, or their feet set wide open threes. So, you make him work for his points. I think early in the series maybe too, and try to really make him 40 minutes of earning every bucket. Maybe you tire him out later on in the series, but I agree with you. If he has those balanced lines, everyone feels involved, the offense is clicking. The other thing is, when one guy's your go-to scoring guy, the problem is that late in games, if other guys haven't felt the ball, haven't been involved, then you can go to that double team maybe, because then you can go to that double team and make him swing to Porter in the corner, hasn't touched the ball in 15 possessions or hasn't hit a shot for a while. Then you put your money on hey, we're going to pick on you and see if you can knock one down without feeling in rhythm. So there definitely is an argument there.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing, man. Those pick and pops where, they try to fucking go out and got him and he just blows by you. He's like a fucking manatee, just fucking blowing by you.
All one speed though. That's a great thing about him. There's nothing fancy about his.
No,
his footwork's great. It's just great, but he's not like your pet peeve of doing, step back crossover behind him. But he's just one speed. He sees which way you're leaning or the weight of your body is, and then picks on that and just goes by you at that same speed, almost annoyingly. Because you're like, how is this dude getting by me? But you said, I've done it to everybody in the league. So fun to watch. The last series, we don't really know who's going to be in it yet. Utah versus either the Clippers or Dallas. So let's go Clippers-Dallas Game 7 in LA. Now, the funny thing about this series is the first 7-game series in NBA history, which we'll touch on later, that a home team has not won a game, which is an amazing stat. So every road team has won in this series. So, does that favor the Clippers going back to LA?
Fucking amazing, this series, man. Last game might have been one of the best games in the playoffs to watch, because Game 6 was an old school. Actually, both teams were engaged in defense, which you haven't seen that in a long fucking time. Both teams are engaged in defense. A lot of mid-range shots, just not jacking up 82-footers. It was a fun game to watch. Just, not that anything was spectacular about it, but just sort of the style. I think that LA sort of, if both those guys, George and Leonard, show up, if they show up, they're going to win this game pretty handedly, 10, 12 points. But if they're wishy-washy about it and go 7 minutes where they're fucking throwing the ball away and doing just like, they don't tighten their act up, and then you let Doncic do what he does, it'll be closer than it should be. But, my hat's off to Dallas of what they've done, man. Like, Carlisle with that, putting Boban in the starting lineup, like that's, to me, like I said, coaching's overrated in the NBA because it's mostly on your talent. But I think this is where you pay for coaching, where, people could like make the adjustments in playoff series, for that go in their favor and just make the change that's going to, really impact the game. And I think Boban and that, in short spurts have been, now as it has been very effective for them, but as it goes longer into it, obviously it's less effective. But I think that the Clippers should win this by about 11 points. But hey, not one team has stepped up at home yet. So I have no idea which way to turn on it. But I'm going to say Clippers by 11. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the betting people are all saying the Clippers, but you just don't know. Like you said, you don't know who's going to show up for the Clippers. There's been a lot of adjustments. Carlisle, like you said, he went the anti-small ball with an anti-big ball, which was, I think it was a ballsy move. And like you said, one that a coach with experience is okay to make, and you got to make those moves every now and then. And it worked for him in Game 5, and now Game 6 was a different adjustment. So it's been a fun series. I don't think anyone thought it would go 7. We thought maybe 5 or 6, but to go 7, in the fashion that it has, like to not win a home game on your home floor. It's just bonkers. It is where the world is, coronavirus and everything imploding. It makes sense, right? But I think the Clippers will get through that one. Kawhi, I think, is starting to find a really good rhythm. We talk about Paul George and Kawhi's team. Let's be clear, it's Kawhi's team. I mean, Paul George is the second option to Kawhi on that team, and a very good second option. Don't get me wrong, but I think they go as far as Kawhi takes them. If Kawhi has a quiet game and Paul George kills it, I don't think they win many games in the playoffs. That's just my opinion. I think Kawhi just so efficient, gets to the free throw line a lot, but yeah, defensively as well. If they can keep that length on Doncic and keep those two, Kawhi and Paul George out of foul trouble on Doncic, I think they have a big case. But Dallas just they're so reliant on Doncic. If he's not balling for them, they lose. The other thing is that we've spoken about before. I mean, Porzingis in Game 6, he looked like he was already on vacation. He does not look happy out there, bro. Like there's something going on there. I'm not sure what happens in the off season, but he looks pissed.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the Porzingis thing, and we've talked about it at length here too. But like, look, going back to it real quick, like the trade itself to acquire the guy, I think 1,000% of the people would say they won that trade 1,000% to 0. They traded him everything that they weren't going to use going forward to get a player that was an all-star caliber player. And I think that they didn't know exactly how Doncic was going to play, as far as like they knew what they had as far as like he's going to be a really good player. But I don't think they knew how he's going to take the league over like he has, and then how he has to play. And with Porzingis, you got to give him the ball. You got to post him up. You got to let him hold the ball a little bit. The problem is, A, that's not how Dallas wants to play. They don't want to post anybody up. B, Doncic plays much better. I mean, he can play better with anybody. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Porzingis or anybody. The guy just figures it out. But he's better when he has a rolling 5 and 3 other guys that could just shoot, straight line drive, and defend. And he needs less people to hold the ball. And Porzingis, the way he plays, it's just, look, when he re-signed him, I thought it was going to be a 50-50 when they traded for him, that he was going to sign back with Dallas. They haven't really signed anybody great in free agency over the years. So I thought there were going to be other people that were going to sign him. They signed him, and I don't think anybody really argued with that either. It's just the way he plays versus the way Doncic needs to play. And he's unsure of himself because of the injuries that he's had. Hasn't really had long stretches where he's played 15, 20 games in a row without getting hurt or having to sit out back-to-backs and things like that. So I don't think that He rushes. He's passive now because I don't think he knows when to shoot, when not to shoot. And he doesn't shoot it well enough. He's very streaky with that, but he can make shots, but he's not. That's the problem. Like he's sort of like, what do I do in a sense? But at points, he can make a shot. He could drive you. He could cut. He could do some things, but the way they need him to play versus the way he's sort of wired to play is what's fucking everything up. And then the guy makes just shy of $100 million over the next 3 years. So I don't see that ending anytime soon because I don't think any team, unless it's a multiple team trade and things like that, I don't think there's a lot of teams, he's sort of like, I don't think there's a lot of teams that are going to try to acquire that $30 million into their cap, and give you assets in return. So I don't know how that goes. And I think you're better just playing Powell, to be honest with you, and playing, like I said, play him off the bench, let him get going a little bit offensively. But I think Powell plays much better in that environment where, they go with Kleber and they go with Hardaway, Kleber, and Smith with Powell. And now they got guys who could switch, they could guard people, and they got their rolling five. The problem is the Clippers forced the ball out of Doncic's hands, and those guys have to make a play. Hardaway has been very good this year, unbelievably good this year, but they don't really have that consistency of throwing the ball out of his hands and giving it to somebody who's a playmaker. Dorian Finney-Smith can make shots, he can straight line drive you, but he's not a playmaker. Hardaway has been good, but very streaky. Kleber's more of a straight line driver, spot up shooter. The next play, like that next guaranteed number 2 guy that could get a shot, that's what they're missing. And it's just been an interesting series to watch. I loved it because they actually going big a little bit, playing through the post a little bit. You don't see that a lot in the mid range with Kawhi. Like Kawhi's taken 5 wild shots the whole series. Like everybody, working on that, all players at home working on those bullshit fucking moves, those trainers are robbing your money of every fucking summer. He doesn't do it. He's an unbelievable player to watch. It's either a straight line drive, a mid-range pull-up, a post-up spin, pick and roll finish, pick and roll 3 if they go under, and then he'll get into a little bit of an ISO game when he needs to. But 5 of them, I counted, well, maybe a little bit more that he missed, but there has been very few of those, and he's just a calming effect for the Clippers, just being a very efficient player.
Yeah, and it'd just be interesting. I like the Porzingis off the bench theory because I think it then gives a scoring punch off the bench, and then you can rest Luka for a little bit and then go through Porzingis. Whereas right now, I just don't think they work well together. Honestly, I think you blitz Doncic, and Porzingis is just popping to the 3. You throw it to Porzingis, he hangs onto it for a couple of seconds before he makes a decision. Whereas I think Powell sprinting down from the baseline into a pick and roll and rolling while Doncic is attacking downhill, it at least gets Doncic in the paint and makes the defense have to at least have taggers to rotate and whatnot. So I like that adjustment, but obviously they see something we don't. They're living and dying by Porzingis at the 5 and even at the 4 now with Marjanovic starting. So it'll be interesting to see if there's one final change, one final curveball in that series. But either way, they will face Utah. I guess we can't get too in depth because we don't know who it is, but I think Utah's, in a good spot. I think they definitely have a chance. I think, Utah, you'd argue, would do much better against Dallas. Utah, I think, dominated them for the most part in the regular season, blew them out a couple of times, and it was really, really ugly. I think the Clippers pose much more of a threat to Utah, obviously, right?
Totally agree, especially with home court advantage, the way that Utah's playing, their rim protection, their shooting, the ball movement. I think the Clippers will have a much better chance. I'm going to say that I think Utah's going to win regardless.
Okay, big call.
Yeah, that's a big call by a fatso. But yes, I think so. I think they're going to win regardless. It hasn't really been like the more they played together, the more games they played, the Clippers have played much better. It's just up and down, and their mental focus just isn't there enough to me. And again, me saying that, I'm just fucking the whole Salt Lake community because, it's probably going to be a 4-0 sweep if anybody plays them now, if I'm picking them to win, but with my pick, my betting prowess. But I think that they're sort of in tune what they need. They're focused. everybody's favorite Australian can go off at any time. I think that they're into it. As long as Donovan Mitchell, stays healthy and things like that, they just have so many weapons. They move the ball. They play great. I think they can win either way, but that's just me. What do you think, Bogues, on that?
I hope they will. I think the Clippers will push them. I think Zubac's obviously, if the Clippers get through, will have to go from playing basically no minutes these last 3 or 4 games against Dallas to probably a 20 to 30 minute role with Gobert. Ibaka, who knows where his health's at, but I think they'll push him. I think it'll be a much closer series. There's a lot going to be emphasized on a Joe Ingles and even Jordan Clarkson at times defensively, because they're going to have to be guarding a Paul George or even Reggie Jackson's had a pretty good series for Dallas for the most part. So the defense will be key, but I think Quinn the head coach of Utah, does a fantastic job having his guys ready defensively, and their schemes and their team concepts. They do a real good job defensively. So I would love to see Utah get through.
Quinn's the head coach, not Utah. Is not the head coach of Utah?
Johnny Utah? No, it's unfortunately not.
I called him Utah so the last time, so I totally blanked on Quinn's name.
That Utah guy, yeah, but I think they got a really good chance. They play that balanced style, and I think the Clippers prepping for Utah. I think T. Lue will be in that film room for a while, just because you got to pick your poison. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell's the head of the snake when they go for ISO ball and need a bucket, but other than that, they've got so much weapons: Clarkson, Bogdanovic, and Ingles, and you still got to take care of the big fella rolling and get a body on him and Gobert. And Favors off the bench is playing well, so they got a good balanced team. I'd love to just see a team basketball style beat an ISO style on the Clippers. I think it's good for the game. But let's move on to your guy, Danny Ainge. Gone. He's gone out of Boston. Yeah. Interesting pivot. One you don't really see very often. Not straight away. Usually it takes a couple of years, but to jump straight from holding the clipboard, Brad Stevens is now gone into a front office role, taking basically, Danny Ainge's job essentially. So how have you seen all that with your Boston ties, and what have you heard?
You sort of hear conflicting stories, and it's all over the place about a million different things. I don't know. It just seems to me that it wasn't going great, that Danny just sort of, he's been there a long time. He's been there, 18 years. And I think it just sort of had enough. It just sort of got to a point where they got to as far as they can get. Maybe he felt as though that it's just time to step away. I don't think that he was forced out, in my opinion. I think it's just sort of like, because he could have easily gone another year, if not longer. But even if they struggle next year, they may have to make a change after next year if they would keep going with everybody intact. The Stevens thing, it has to be a little bit of financial motivation, because I think he just signed like a 6-year deal. I assume he's probably making close to $7 million a year. So it's a lot of fucking money if they were going to let him go, just to let him go. Because now with Ainge gone, you'd have to get a primetime GM, a primetime coach, or at least the best coach you can get, and you still have to pay Stevens. So I think that they probably just sort of said, hey, I don't know what decision was made. He said he was a little burnt out of coaching. It was time that if he just left on his own, then he forfeits that money. So I think that he sits there for a year or two. He gets to pick the next coach, which is pretty cool for a coach to do, I guess. And I assume he'll probably be coaching in the next 2 years, back in the NBA. But I think, it's probably good to step away for a little bit. And for the Celtics, they could sort of, look, their team's built. They're really not. There's not a lot of changes they can make unless they want to trade either Brown or Tatum, which I don't see that happening.
Wait, so you think Brad Stevens will be coaching again in the next couple of years? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, I think so. And again, I don't know anything. I could be totally wrong. Yep. Maybe he said fuck it, but the guy's 44 years old and he's a coach. He's a coach. He's fired up to coach. It's not one of those guys that like doing TV. They don't know if they want to run a team. They like sort of pivoting. The guy's a coach. That's all he knows. It's what he likes. I'm not saying that he can't do the job, which I think he'll be fine running a team. When you run a team, Bogues, especially in these days, you've got all the staff to do a lot of the stuff that you're sort of weak at. Cap management, the scouting piece, just sort of the trades, obviously, that you haven't really been involved with that stuff. So they'll have the staff around him to sort of do a lot of the stuff that he needs to do. And he gets to pick the coach, and he could, he's probably going to be involved, and hands-on a little bit with the coach going forward, unless they hire a retread that's been around for a long time. So it's interesting because Danny's done an unbelievable job there, in the sense that when he took the job over, the team was sort of coming off their Eastern Conference Finals. He takes the job like late year. They brought him in like during the playoffs of the like in 2003. He comes in, he blows the team up. They're bad for a few years. He gets Doc Rivers to coach, does the Garnett deal, championship. If Garnett doesn't go down in 2009 with that knee injury, they probably win. They probably challenge the Lakers again in 2009. They were lucky as hell, that the Lakers were lucky as hell that Perkins got hurt in 10. So you're looking at multiple championship there. He then does the Brooklyn heist where, he gets all those draft picks that ends up getting him Brown and Tatum, from throughout the draft. And now it builds him up again for multiple Eastern Conference Finals and just couldn't get over the hump. Now, the draft picks weren't great later on that he drafted, the guys that he had to draft mid and late round. But I think what he's done, most GMs haven't done for their own teams, and brought him into a championship and then probably could have won multiple, and now have a couple of all-star young players in the lineup. It's interesting. What do you what's your take on it, Bogues?
Just a strange pivot, one that you don't see very often. You ever rarely see a coach stepping down or whatever, however they want to word it, and moving in and taking the GM job. It just doesn't really happen. Usually you see a head coach getting a job and then demanding to be the president as well, a la Van Gundy and a la Doc and whatnot. But yeah, this is just a strange pivot that I haven't seen, so I thought it was pretty good to discuss. What are you hearing? Are you hearing anything as far as who they'd be looking at? Who would be in Brad Stevens' wheelhouse? Will he go probably college route, or will he look to hire within the league?
I think that there's always somebody coming out of the blue that like everyone thinks that never thinks about. It was Brad Stevens when the Celtics, sort of hired somebody for Doc, but Jay Wright, like I think every fucking NBA team, they're on their training manual. It says when we have a head coaching vacancy, offer it to Jay Wright of Villanova, because everybody offers Jay Wright, and Jay Wright, like fucking Krzyzewski did 15 years ago, tells him to fuck off, and I don't want to coach. And I think that that's going to be the same thing. They'll probably go after him first. I think that they'll go after a lot of people, and they'll talk to a lot of people, assistants, head coaches. I think that it's one of those jobs where it's a turnkey thing. You've got two all-stars. You've got Kemba Walker, hasn't been great, but still very good. They've got some role players that aren't bad. They got a couple of young kids that aren't bad. So I don't think they're going to go the assistant route. Now, it's a perfect opportunity. I haven't heard that. Now, I've heard some rumblings, but, most of it's bullshit. Like, it's funny, like, when media guys throw out coaches that they're boys with. So they'll always have an angle like, Chauncey Billups is this, and that he's boys with Chauncey Billups, or this or that. I have heard that Becky Hammon's name is coming up a little bit more in Boston. If that has a chance, that would be the perfect opportunity to hire Becky now. You're the first. You know how everybody wants to be the first one to do everything. Yeah. Because here's the thing, like Brad Stevens is going to be involved with the coach. He's not going to be hands off. He's a coach. That's what he does. He's not a GM that doesn't know a lot about coaching except watching synergy clips like a lot of GMs and try to get involved with the fucking coach as far as what they're doing, what plays they're running, blah, blah, blah. This is a coach who's considered a top 10 coach in the league and, is a very smart coach. So to hire a younger coach that he could develop hands-on, especially if they have success, it'll be better for him. Becky Hammon, I think that if there's a job out there for her right now, could be Boston. But I think they'll talk to Chauncey Billups. I think Juwan Howard's a guy that will get some traction here. I don't think Juwan will take it. He's got a great job in Michigan, but I think that they'll try to go after him. I can't see like an assistant that hasn't had head coaching experience going there for that route, but Terry Stotts is going to be a name that they'll probably think about because, look, they're on the verge. They're not bad. They could still challenge for the East. They just got to get some things going, and they sort of got to change the way that things have been done as far as like, players sort of accountability and just sort of getting everybody focused at the task at hand. But I mean, they've got talent. It's not like Orlando where you got a bunch of young kids that haven't done anything. This is a team that have players that have playoff experience, been in the Eastern Conference Finals, have most of their roster is back. It'll be interesting who they take, but don't be surprised, if they go after a Becky Hammon for this. I'm not saying it's going to happen 1,000%, but this might have, her name on, at least be a finalist for the job and have a chance at it. But if she doesn't go that route, Terry Stotts would be a name. I just can't see Chauncey Billups being a name that they want to bring in because they're so close and he's got very little experience, coaching. And I think they would want to bring in somebody that sort of had experience that could handle some of these things that they need to iron out.
Yep. Yeah, it makes sense. And then just quickly on the Celtics, there's already rumblings about Kemba Walker being moved, one of the most overpaid players in the NBA. League sources expect the Celtics to explore moving him in a trade to help create some current and future salary flexibility. That was from Brian Robb at Booth Newspapers. So it's already starting. They obviously got to make some room salary cap wise, and I don't think Kemba's really worked out in Boston as they would have hoped.
No, and they had to sign somebody. They lost Kyrie, and you know how it is. It's a thrill of the chase in free agency. You lose Kyrie, you have these players. And look, if Hayward doesn't get hurt, early in his career, Boston career, things could be a lot different there. But like Hayward gets hurt, that happened. The Kyrie deal, they had to replace Kyrie, and he was just floating around. And he had the bad knee or what have you. He hasn't been great. He's had some injury setbacks. So yeah, like he's definitely been somebody that that they probably expected a little bit more out of. The guy's a good pro. He tries, averaged 19, 4, and 5 from them last year. But again, it goes back to the Porzingis thing, Bogues. Like the guys get like 36 and 37 million left, I think, in his next 2 years. Like, I don't think there's a lot of teams like begging to take that back unless they're, I just don't know how they're going to get that done. And then they are so far over the cap that it's not like they're going to just get off his money and someone's going to take him in their cap room and then they get that money to spend. They're going to have to take some things back. And I just don't know who's begging to get a Kemba Walker right now at his advanced age and sort of injury history to give them like great assets. The only way that they're going to make this thing work is if they move Jaylen Brown and they get something back for Jaylen Brown. They're not going to trade Tatum. Kemba's got a lot of money. They're probably going to re-sign Fournier. I don't know what he'll demand in free agency, 15, 18 million. But like, I don't know what other moves they can make. Like, I don't know what GM's really like begging you to take like Robert Williams off your hands or Grant Williams off their hands. They don't really have a lot of assets that they can move. It'll be interesting. Marcus Smart's solid. Like I like him. They've got assets. It's just interesting what move they're going to try to make.
Yeah, we'll watch that space. But they definitely are close, but they're not. I think their bench needs to be restructured. So we'll watch how that goes in the offseason. And obviously the first stop for them is getting a head coach before you can make any trades or sign any free agents. You need a coach. So the next one that went down was Terry Stotts. So I think I read his comments probably about 3 days ago. There was some comments he was asked about, his coaching future. And I like to call these the kiss of death comments. When a head coach tells you that he's happy to be somewhere and he has 2 years left on his deal and everything's, up to management, he's going to generally get fired. He made those comments and was fired within 2 days. So he's gone. We kind of called that if they don't get past the second round or deeper, that they would move on from Terry Stotts. They have. So we got one right at least. And what was interesting about this was Dame Lillard, which you don't often see, has publicly commented on wanting Jason Kidd for that head coaching spot. So we don't often see superstar players, put their balls on the line publicly because they'll try to do it behind closed doors and not take any any issue with being wrong or whatever. If the franchise goes a different direction, and a lot of them don't like putting pressure on their franchise. But I kind of respect it. I mean, Dame Lillard is their franchise guy, and he wants J Kidd. I mean, how do you see all that unfolding?
Bogues, if there's anybody that can name their fucking coach in this league, I think Dame Lillard's definitely earned it. Like, I mean, he could have gone different places. You know, he's a loyal guy. The guy sort of does it like the old school way. I respect the fuck out of the guy. And he's done so much for Portland, you know, like he overachieved in the spot that he was drafted in. You know, he sort of brought them to sort of, you know, very close in past years. And I think that, like, he should have, like, when most players said, well, you know, they got to talk to me first, you know, I sort of, like, rolled my eyes like, this bullshit. But, like, Damian Lillard's done a lot there. He stayed. You don't see a lot of players, like you said. It's usually, like, bullshit when they, like, sort of give coaches sort of, like, you know, like their recommendation for a coach. It's sort of like, or they're behind a coach. It's sort of like scripted or whatever. I think Dame Lillard, like, that's who he wants. I'm not saying just a guarantee to do it just based on his words. I think if he wants him, and now you start hearing about all these other teams that want to trade for Dame Lillard now and things aren't going great and all that, I think Jason Kidd will have a very good chance of getting that job. Why not? Like, if that's going to keep him there. Now, look, we've seen this before. The best story I've ever seen about a player doing that, Lamar Odom, was at URI, and a coach that coached you at Golden State, right? Jerry DiGregorio?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jerry's like Lamar Odom's prep school coach at some fucking school in, like, Connecticut, right? Or in New York. I forgot what it was. It was just like literally the school was there for Lamar Odom, right? And that was it, just to get him eligible. So he goes with Lamar and he goes to URI as an assistant. Their coach, they do well. Their coach leaves, goes somewhere else to you know, I forgot where he went, Georgia or something. And Lamar Odom goes, if you hire Jerry DiGregorio, I stay. They hired Jerry DiGregorio, give him a contract, and he was fucking gone. 24 hours later, he was fucking gone. So yeah, like, this shit happens, right? Like, I'm staying. You know, yeah, just hired my coach or this guy, and they both got Oakland ties, right? With Dame Lillard's from Oakland, correct?
I think that's where it stems from. Yeah, yep.
Oakland thing. J Kidd, ex-player, played his position. You know, Hall of Famer, all that stuff. I could see that, and fuck, why not? If the guy's giving him, you know, I would definitely call him a finalist. I'd say about 75% chance that you'll probably see J Kidd there. What are your thoughts?
Call me a conspiracy theorist, but the trade rumblings for Dame coming at the same time that he's named his head coach,
yeah,
could be a play from the agent of Dame, like, hey, get my guy the coach he wants. He's going to start making some. I'm going to start making some noise. So it's just coincidental that the two rumors circulated within a day of each other. So take
without fucking question.
Yeah, that's a game for everyone listening. Question. That's the chess game for everyone listening that most fans and most people would pass over their head. You got to read between the lines sometimes, and I'm reading that between the lines that's an agent push publicly through his cronies that he has, media friends that, you know, get my guy who he wants, and if you don't, we're going to be knocking on doors to get out of there. So, and I don't think Dame was the kind of guy that would say that publicly. I think he'd let that handle behind closed scenes, but you can guarantee there's some chess pieces being moved. And you know, Dame's not getting any younger. He's getting up there in age, and he's one of the best scorers in the NBA. And he's probably thinking, like, where's my Steph Curry chance? You know, where's my chance to compete in a conference finals or NBA finals to win a championship? And it's probably weighing on him a little bit, and rightfully so. They haven't really had an opportunity or a roster that has been, you know, championship contention since he's been there. So one thing around Terry Stotts, I caught this article on Hoops Hype. It was this Jason Quick and Shams at The Athletic. The Blazers hoped to let the dust settle on this season before making a decision on Stotts, but Stotts and his agent wanted a quick resolution in the case they needed to explore other opportunities. So basically, reading between the lines, I think Terry Stotts has some other offers on the table. What's interesting is he has 2 years remaining on his deal. So for those listening, a lot of coaches out there will generally take a sabbatical for those 2 years, or however many years they have on their contract. They'll go and do, you know, coaching tours, visit different friends in the NBA. They go to Europe, they go to Australia, whatever, because they'll get paid basically for doing that. If you get another job, the way they do it sometimes is you can't double dip, but there has been tweaks to that now, but generally, historically, you can't. If you get another job, you know, there's a formula they figure out where you can't double dip from both teams. But the second part of this story, Stotts is believed to be a candidate in the end in Indiana, should the Pacers make a change?
Yeah.
I mean, you think the Pacers are making a change, bro?
Yeah, that's like saying if I might eat pizza on Friday night. I mean, it's the same fucking thing. I mean, they're going to make the change. I definitely do believe they'll make a change. I think they'd want Stotts. Look, they don't have to pay Stotts a lot of money, obviously, with the offset. So literally, understanding it the way I do, I think that with the offset, so if, say, he's getting $5 million a year at Portland and Indiana offers him a job for $5 million, that Portland owes him the $5 million, because that was his original deal. Now, maybe the Indiana has to pay a partial with that, but if Indiana, say, wanted to pay him $7 million, that I think that Portland will kick in the first $5 million, and then they would have to handle the $2 million.
Yeah,
forgot how exactly
that's
it works.
right. Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. I would think him and Steve Clifford would be because they're not going to go with first year coach again. I think that they've done that and it didn't work. So I think they're going to hire more of a veteran. And I think that Stotts, Clifford, those two guys would be, I think those two guys would probably be, A and B on their list of candidates.
You better be careful, pro. You're going to be in a Mark Spears article.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah. Add Vanderpool in there, and you'll be okay. And Clifford, Steve Clifford, obviously just got announced today. As Pro mentioned, Steve Clifford is gone from the Orlando Magic, and that's one that we discussed with our coaching, safe or not. He was one that we thought would probably move on because they're in a full blown rebuild, and you're gonna start building around Mo Bamba, pro.
Yeah, no shit. Fucking Mo Bamba kicking me in the ass again. I think that the Magic will probably hire an assistant this one. I think Jamal Mosley or Udoka. I think one of those two guys would be a great candidate for that position. So I think Jamal Mosley is probably the assistant. That's probably, if there's going to be a head job in the league where they have a young team that needs just sort of a young coach to grow with the players, I think that Jamal Mosley would be right in there with it. I think he'll have a great chance at that job.
That's your Australian Boomers assistant coach, Jamal Mosley, pro.
Oh, really? He's an assistant with Australia?
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's come on with Brian Goorjian. So Brian Goorjian, who's the head coach, once coached the Victoria Titans when I was a child, a local NBL team, okay. And Jamal Mosley was the import at the time. So that's where that relationship stemmed from. So I kind of knew Jamal.
Sweet.
Jamal knew me when I was 15, 16. But yeah, he's now the assistant coach with Brian Goorjian. So he definitely is in line as one of the prime candidates to get a head coaching job in the NBA. And we hope, we both work with him, and I liked him a lot. I think he's a great dude. But one final thing I love with these coaching hirings and firings is the new wording around it, pro. It's always a mutual decision.
Oh yeah, now everything's fucking mutual.
Every time I read it, it's like, why is it so frowned upon? Like, hey, you didn't do well, we're moving on, or hey, I want to move on. It's never mutual, people. Whenever you see a mutual decision, do some research and come to your own conclusions, because it ever rarely is. Mutual basically means we show up at the boardroom the same time and be like, I know what you're thinking, I should move on. Yep, you should fire me. All right, great. See you later. It doesn't work that way. So take that with a grain of salt.
I mean, the only reason why I would give a fuck about quitting versus getting fired is if they have money guaranteed on the table that you would do it. But like some coaches and some people think it actually saves face by saying, oh, it's a mutual decision versus like the team would always say, hey, we got your back. We'll just say it was mutual and we didn't fire you. Now just say I fucking got fired. Like, it's not a big deal. Like,
you're not fooling anyone.
You know what I'm saying? You're not fooling anybody. It's like me coming on the station. It's like me and the Mavericks were mutual split. No, it doesn't happen that way. I got fucking fired. Like, it happens. Like, somebody's going to find out anyway. So what, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just say, hey, you know what? I fucking I couldn't stand them. I got fired, or I quit, whatever. But like, everybody wants to save their fucking reputation. It's this whole brand bullshit. You know what I'm saying, Bogues?
Yeah, but what's it saving?
Fuck that brand.
It's like most teams know, you got moved on from that club. Like, they'll call around and be like, why did you move that guy on? They'll do their homework, and it is what it is. Like, it's not, people look at failure as a bad thing. At times it's not. You learn, now if you're a coach, the second, third, fourth job, you keep getting fired, there's obviously an issue. But you got to learn from it sometimes. And I think that's what, people are scared to run from that by labeling it mutual decision, just a politically correct term. So nobody's offended, but that's where we are as society. LeBron James, the most shameless plug I've seen in a long time.
Oh,
I'm not sure if you saw the video, but for those that haven't, he has at the end of the Lakers Phoenix series gave an interview about somebody asked him about Tokyo's Olympic Games, and he basically said he won't be playing, and I think I'm going to play for the Tune squad this summer instead of the Olympics. So a nice little Space Jam promotion when asked about the Olympics, but I guess the noteworthy part of this is he's out of the Olympics, bro, and I think a lot of players are going to follow suit. I don't think this is the first one, and LeBron James is obviously the biggest name in basketball currently in the world. So for him to pull out, it's a big thing. But I think this is not going to be the only guy. There's going to be a boatload of NBA players that just aren't going to want to play.
Yeah, first of all, his sense of humor is brutal. Like when he tries to like pull a joke, it doesn't. I don't know. He has a hard time capturing me sometimes, but this pandemic with the scheduling, with the lack of rest these guys have and injury concerns, and then, it's rough on it. I mean, I'd like to hear your take with a non-pandemic year when you have to play like a long playoff push and then even a mid-level playoff push, and then you have to play in the Olympics when you had some rest, and then Olympics, and then go into your season, because the Olympics probably runs till like probably late September, and then you got to like training camp opens not so long after. Like, I don't really blame them on these players on this time. I mean, look, with all the bubble stuff, then they go into a season 70 days later, and then, and then they get the playoffs, and then they get the bubble again. I mean, they get the Olympics again, and then they get their season right around the corner after that. Like, I don't really blame them this time about Olympic stuff. Like, but I mean, some people are crazy about their, they love to represent their country with their national team. I get it, but I don't really blame him for not doing it. I just think the joke was fucking brutal. Unless he got another $3 million bonus from the fucking, from the studio for mentioning the name in a press conference. But I don't know. What do you think, Bogues? Because I know you love playing for your national team.
Oh, it's hard, man. I've been on record. Like sometimes you're banged up. I've missed a few campaigns with injuries, and it takes a toll. People don't realize. Like we're a little different from Team USA. We don't get paid to play for our national team, so we're doing it basically at cost. Get per diem, and that's kind of it. And we're trying to win a medal for our country. So it is hard. It takes a toll on your body, and then it's that avalanche effect then of carrying a niggling injury, something that's bothering you that you don't rehab properly in the off season because you're playing with the national team. Then you carry that on into your training camp. So I've seen numerous guys, including myself, that have then got hurt early in an NBA year based on just load, just playing a lot of basketball and traveling to, some pretty remote places in the world for national team friendlies. And, I can tell you about some of the places we've been on buses that basically, wouldn't be compliant anywhere in the world, but the country we were in, tires almost fallen off, and being on planes, there were stories where Brian Gorgon early on in his Boomers tenure in the early 2000s got on planes in China to go to remote destinations. They had chickens in the overhead, so live chickens. So that's what you have to deal with international basketball at times, and we're not Team USA. We're not traveling on a chartered plane. And you
didn't stay in a cruise? You didn't stay on a fucking on the Love Boat for fucking
no.
For your Olympic Village?
No, unfortunately. So it does take a toll, man. And even if you're on a private jet, it's still extra miles on your body. So it is something that people generally. I don't feel sorry for you about it, but the general public forget that you're playing for your national team generally for free in most countries in the world, and it does take up your off season, your family time, and it is a big commitment that should be kind of noted. But yeah, I just think this Olympics is going to be. I think we're going to see a lot of guys pull out, especially with the rules that they're announcing. Japan very, very strict. That they similar to probably the NBA protocol of two tests a day, and there were stories. Our Olympic community put out something saying, if you go to the dining hall, you're not allowed to talk if you're eating with your teammates. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, seriously, because you could spread the virus while you're eating. Like, I mean, if it's that serious, don't have the games. Like if you're really that scared about that. So it's not going to be an Olympics in the traditional form. I think there's a lot of things that are going to be taken away, a lot of great things that you get to experience in a general non-COVID year. So yeah, I'm just not sure. And the fact that they've introduced a bunch of strange sports by Olympic definition, like breakdancing, and not taking anything away from breakdancers, but Olympic sport, not sure. So they're trying to obviously link to the younger demographic and get some younger eyeballs because they know viewership's dwindling with every Olympics, but it will be interesting.
I mean, can they have cupcake eating for a fucking Olympic sport so I can get on that shit? Or
there's a hot dog eating. Look at that hot dog eating. That might get there one day.
Yeah, but
that Japanese dude, that small Japanese dude, he wins every time. It's like
that little prick. There's no fucking chance. I can't. I'm out of that shit. Pasta eating, I'm in, but fuck that shit. I'm out.
All right, Dennis Schroeder. We discussed him not long ago. I think you said it was a good thing he opted out of his deal. I think, if I'm correct. A few podcasts ago, I said he was an idiot. Magic Johnson basically said he doesn't think he's a Laker or what being a Laker is about. Basically said that on public record. So good luck to Dennis Schroeder getting a deal from them. But here's Magic's comments. I don't think he brings that winning mentality and attitude that we need. He had a chance to show that in this series, and to me, he failed in this series. It's just my opinion. I don't know if they're going to sign him back or not. Well, Magic has a lot of weight in LA, so I'd assume they're not going to sign him back. I know Pelinka still rates him pretty highly, Magic that is, and gets advice from him, to this day. But my whole thing, Pro, still is, I know you disagree with it, but I just don't know how he turned that money down. You're living in LA, playing with the Lakers. All I can think of is he has a silent agreement with someone, or someone's told him, hey, don't take that deal and we'll give you way more. But I wonder if those same people watch that playoff series, bro.
Yeah, and he didn't have a great playoff, no doubt. But, fucking Magic, he's like me picking games with what he fucking says, you should, follow what he says. I remember... I didn't mind Magic. I loved him as a player, and I sort of like hearing him talk about things. But, I remember, when D'Antoni was a coach, he's tweeting out, fire D'Antoni. What the fuck? What are you doing? You're fucking with people's livelihoods. And then he's, the shit he pulled about quitting fucking, through the midway through the season or whatever, whenever he quit with the Lakers when he was sort of in the front office with Pelinka. Look, Schroeder isn't great, right? He's not a prototypical 80s Laker player without question. He's got a little edge to him. Not the greatest teammate in the world, I get it. But he's a pretty good player. Now, when he opts out of the contract, I'm not 100% positive on this, but they have his bird rights, I believe. So he could re-sign with the Lakers. But it's just he was just getting out of his 1-year option, but they could still sign him. And I believe they still have his bird rights to do so. I may not be correct on this, but I'm almost positive. The Lakers are fucked. The way they're constructed, they're completely fucked because they got LeBron and Anthony. They got LeBron and AD, right? So LeBron's making next year $41 million. Anthony Davis makes $35 million, and then the rest of the team, they got a bunch of free agents because they got a bunch of guys that are sort of on minimum deals and things. But to construct a roster, because of they're so heavily dependent on the financially and talent-wise with LeBron and AD, they don't have that third guy or fourth guy. Kuzma's been inconsistent. Gasol just sort of doesn't have much left. Schroeder at times plays well, but whatever. But they're over the cap. They're going to have to do some things, so they're going to be over the cap. So they don't have all this money to bring in another free agent. The only thing they could really do is trade Anthony Davis if they wanted to, which obviously they're not. There's not a lot of movement that they can make to create this room or get these assets. If you're going to trade Kuzma, he's at $13 million a year for the next 3 years, right? I don't know what you're going to get back for Kuzma. There's not this deal or this free agent pickup that they can make that's going to make this team a lot better. And with Davis's injury history, it's going to be tough. Look, they did what they did, and they got to a championship. Let's not forget that they won a championship, but they got rid of some guys they got rid of Zubac. They gave Zubac away in a deal to the Clippers. That's an extra guy that they had. They didn't have to re-sign. They didn't have to get out and get Drummond. Zubac is a much better player than Drummond is. There's some moves they could have made, but they won a championship. They rested on that, but now with those two guys making that much money, and they don't really have that other guy. We talk about Golden State all the time, sort of what are they going to do? But at least with their team, even though I don't really like Wiggins, you got you got Curry, Clay, and you got Wiggins as that third guy, and you got Wiseman, who's a young, pretty good player. So they've got multiple guys that they can sort of go to carry the team a little bit. Where the Lakers, past those two guys, well, LeBron's a great player, but he's getting up there in age. He's getting less and less a little bit effective. Of course, he's still the best player in the league, right now. But I'm saying there's not a lot of upside to them. They gave all their assets away.
At the end of the day, he's getting old. It's age is no, you're not defeating age. It's undefeated. And then Davis's injury history as well. What do they do? They're in a tough spot.
There's really all their players, all their draft picks went into the Davis trade. So I don't know what they do. Losing Rondo and Howard was a huge loss to them because of the money they made versus their production. And you take that off their second unit, and they were a lot less. They're just sort of less relevant as a team. And now, that second unit's affected, and they just don't have that third guy to go to, that playmaker. That Kuzma's going to have to really do some stuff in the offseason, I think, to really help that team because again, they don't really have a lot of options.
Yeah, he's a third option.
No,
I'm hearing Caruso too's priming for a pretty big deal in the offseason. I think there's a few people that have told me there are a few teams eyeing him for a pretty substantial upgrade financially. So they'll probably lose him. I think he's a big glue guy for them off the bench as well. So, they lose him. I think that hurts their bench mob, which is already pretty thin as it is. They're probably going to have to try to get some sweetheart deals from some veterans in the offseason. And the other option is they can just wait for Bronny James to graduate high school and join the Lakers. That's probably the last thing they probably need to do. Man,
I mean, they're going to have to go deep into the tax and re-sign players that are just okay. Like Drummond, you're going to re-sign Drummond. You're going to try to re-sign Schroeder. But you're going basically with the same crew. You're going to have the mid-level, the taxpayer mid-level probably to spend. Maybe they'll have the full mid-level. I'm not sure. But there's really not that player out there that's going to save them. And all these teams in the West are getting better. Dallas, to me, regardless of what happens tomorrow, Dallas is on not on easy street, but they're going to be a top 4 team next year. So you're going to have to deal with them. Memphis is sort of knocking at your door. Utah's very good. Phoenix, I don't know what's going to happen with Phoenix.
Yeah, Denver.
Yeah, Denver, look, with those two guys healthy and rolling all year, great. But with James's age and Davis's injury history, it's going to be hard to get those two guys healthy, and expect those guys to be healthy throughout a whole season and all playoff campaign. You're going to probably have to reshape play. What do they call that with player rest?
Load management.
Load management. They're going to have to get really load management.
Yeah, but they can't afford to do it. They won't get enough wins to even be if they load manage. They look terrible without LeBron and Davis on the floor, and they're just then you're relying on Kuzma to drop 30 a night. It's just not going to happen. But I don't feel bad for him. I love seeing the Lakers in these situations just because they're the big dog always, and they're always the big market, big dog, the name in lights. So they deserve a little bit of down years. Final one. The quick NBA news. Some New Orleans players, check the wording of this though, via Bleacher Report. Some New Orleans players were not vibing with coach during their 31-41 season. So this is Stan Van Gundy, of course, and we called this months ago. But I just don't think he survives off season, in my opinion.
Nah, if they start, first of all, is there a fucking worse word than vibing? Yeah. Is there a fucking worse word? Vibing, summer vibes.
That's an agent. That's 100% an agent that's given that to the Bleacher Report.
Yeah.
Some lawyer.
Without question.
It's a lawyer agent. So some nerdy white lawyer has probably given that wording to the Bleacher Report, I'd guess.
I'll tell you what, coaching in the NBA today, like I told you, it's almost irrelevant in some cases. The coach has very little control, especially if you have a franchise player that you have to keep happy in free agency, especially if there's a point guard. He just sort of runs the show. These players run the show. And you have to do everything in your power to keep them sort of at bay, happy, motivated, and, believing in you as a coach. That's a fucking juggling act on top of a juggling act that you saw it 20 years ago where the coaches had most of the power, and some of the big time players have it. Look, we talk about player empowerment, right? I don't mind if the top 5 players in the league, top 10 players in the league have player empowerment and you have to tiptoe around them. They deserve it. They're the best players in the league. But when you got to do that shit for the fucking 99th best player in the league, it's got to be a fucking tough hassle. And if you don't change, like most of these guys would get fired in the NBA. Some get fired because they just didn't win and it wasn't really anything about them. But some like wear you the fuck out as a person, wear players out. And they don't figure it out after they got fired and they were off for 9 months that maybe I should work on this and maybe I should change. Now, I don't know why they're not getting along with Van Gundy. It's probably that he's a little rigid, practice hard, doesn't relate to players. I don't know. But when you get fired, you got to figure out, have somebody who tells you the fucking truth of why you got fired, if it wasn't just wins and losses or whatever, and fix that fucking problem. Because especially in today's player, they're very sensitive. They don't fear anybody. You don't care if they're a fucking two-way player or a franchise player. They're going to fucking you're going to have the same problems. And yeah, you're going to find yourself in these articles where they say they're not fucking vibing with you and you're going to see themselves out. It's a rough deal. What do you think on it, Bogues?
Oh, just interesting. I mean, I don't think he's coached particularly well the last season. I think some of those lineups were interesting, the rotations, even their defensive principles early in the season of packing the paint and like contesting threes early on. It just contradicts the way the game. It's opposite of what we're teaching today. We always get in the debate about hoisting up too many threes, and that's neither here or there, but you have to understand that the three is a big part of the game, and you can't be packing the paint and doing what they've been doing. And he adjusted a little bit along the way, but I know there are some players on that squad that aren't too happy with the direction of things. So it'll be just interesting to see if they make that move, because I think they're in that situation where the elephant's sitting in the room. And it's like, do we call the zookeeper to get him out of the room, or do we just let him sit here for a little bit more? They're eventually gonna have to do it. So it's like
the actual politically correct way is zoo professional. That's what they want you to call it, folks. Just so you know, that's the pronoun for it. The zoo professional.
Zookeeper's offensive now, is it?
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
What's
why is any word they just they don't need a reason. None reason.
Ah, Jesus.
Yeah. Zoo professional. I looked it up.
Oh, wow. Well, because in Australia, the payments from the government for coronavirus are called JobKeeper. So they might want to reword that then, because...
Job professional.
Oh, man. I can't wait till I just want to get a dictionary from the 1980s and compare it to today. It'd be absolutely hilarious, because I know words are being deleted as well. There are words out there that have been deleted. Oof. And there's a shitload being added. So it'd be someone out there. It'd be a pretty fun study, taking a shitload of time, but there'd be so many words that have just disappeared quietly.
Stick that vibe up your ass.
Yep. All right, real quick on Overtime Elite. We've talked about it numerous times. They've signed 2 twins again, 2 more twins. So that must be in their operating manual. But Amen Thompson and Asa Thompson, A-U-S-A-R, I hope I pronounced that right, but never heard that name before. 2 of the country's top-rated guards have signed with the league and will be part of its inaugural season. Brothers didn't comment. And then also, Fran Fraschilla has announced Elite has signed its first international player, Gene Montero from the Dominican Republic. He's touted to be a first-round NBA draft pick. So they're moving and shaking. They've what do they have now? At least enough to have one team. So they need to get roaring a little bit more. But we'll keep an eye on that. We won't discuss that too much. We'll just continue to hopefully let you know if there's any other big names that join. The last thing we'll talk about before I get to the NBL, J. Cole. I'm not really familiar with J. Cole and what he does or who he is, but he's pretty big in the world, I understand. But he's playing in the Basketball Africa League, bro. Signed over there, and a player there anonymously came out and was like, for a guy who has so much money, has another career, to just come here and average like 1 point a game and still get glorified, he's very disrespectful to the game and the league. So he has got a lot of notoriety. It's been pretty big news. Not the best player in the league by far. Probably 1 point a game is not too good, but just interesting because, your average player that is doing this for a living is obviously not too happy with good old J. Cole.
Yeah, so he was only going to do a small stint in the league. He's already gone, actually. And I think he had something with like a family obligation or something like that. So he's gone.
Yeah, he was going to disappear because half the league wanted him dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, like I've met him a few times. Like he was close to Dennis Smith Jr. when I was in Dallas. Good dude, respectful, not like, like just sort of respectful. I know he works out a lot. You see him working out with trainers and stuff like that all over Instagram. The problem here, Bogues, with this stuff is like I understand that like publicity wise, it's great to have a guy like that playing in your league. Yeah, everybody knows him, big rap artist, very popular amongst people who listen to that genre of music. But like the problem is he's like 36 and he takes it serious, works out, does all that stuff, but like he's not really a prospect. And you're trying to start this developmental league in Africa where you have all these young players, all over the league that are trying, all over the country, all over the continent, all over the world that are trying to, play in the league and try to get their opportunity. I could see why the guy was pissed. Now, the guy that was pissed and called him out started 2 fucking bench clearing brawls in other places that he was at years before. So he's not exactly fucking Kawhi Leonard of professionalism. So it's like me calling you out for overeating on your dinner tonight. Like the guy that did call him out, but like where are you going as a league though? In my opinion, like I think if you're trying to start a professional league and you're trying to be serious about it, you want younger players that have a chance to play somewhere in the world. It doesn't have to be in the NBA, but once you start, like if you're going to bring in over somebody like 36, 37 years old, sign like Jared Jack or sign someone like that.
Well, the publicity stunt, obviously, and I think that's
yeah.
I think it does the opposite for your league, Pro. I think, like the NBL, signing Eminem, for a month, could come and do a concert pre-game and then playing some games. Like, thinking, it's great for marketing, it's great for eyeballs, but like you're making the league look like a circus, So I agree. I think it's up to him to do it. They let him do it. It's not his problem, but the league itself needs to look at itself like, are you a basketball league or a circus? You can't be both, and I think it looks bad on all the players involved.
Yeah, and the NBA has such a like public relations, like they're trained with that stuff. They're a well-oiled machine. Like they can get the word out on that league and cover it and give it its due. But just having somebody who's never played basketball at a professional level before at the age of like 36, it's tough, man. Like I remember they had that with Master P. Great fucking story. So they had that remember Master P was a rapper in the 90s, and like he made it through training camp in Toronto Raptors, almost made the team. So Master P, how about this, folks? You like this story? At the Jordan camp, I talk about that a lot where like, it's this ritzy camp where, all these kids from all over the world go to the camp to get MJ's autograph. So, but they had all these college counselors that will be first round picks and NBA players that play at night. So Master P's kid, who was a rapper as well, is playing at the camp. Master P and like 3 people at Nike. I was coaching one team. My friend Seb was coaching another. And they come up to us and they go, by no circumstances are you to put Master P in a game. All right. And Master P's big thing was, I'll make him go, That's like his like trademark word. Like that's his catchphrase, right? So like, of course, like game 9, where like people are starting to leave a little bit, they said, Mike, by no circumstances is this guy to come in the game. He comes up to me and he goes, Coach, put me in. I'll make him go, Bogues, I almost fucking cried in his face. I was laughing so hard, but I didn't. I kept it. I said, Master, because that was his first name. I didn't have no fucking idea what his first name was. I said, Master, all due respect, we got to sit this one out, brother. All right? We got to sit this one out, Master. I apologize. And he was a good dude about it, but it was so fucking funny when he was like, I'll make him go, And I'm like, why fucking me? And I start laughing. But yeah, I mean, look, that's like people who want publicity, and like J. Cole's like got one of the biggest followings in rap, and I get it, but like when you're a professional league and you're trying to like, you gotta keep it at a level, you know what I'm saying? And I just think like, I get it. I get why they did it, but I think that it's the wrong message you're trying to send, especially to those other players that are trying to get time. Maybe it's some poor prick that needed those 12, 15 minutes a night to try to sign in Germany next year or Portugal or
signing bonus or, to show that they can play for the next season. Yeah, it's just not good. It's a circus. But that's where the world is going. NBL real quick. I'm just going to go through my tips for award winners, which will probably all be wrong. The season is pretty much wrapping up. There's one or two games left. One of them matters, but it needs to be a pretty big swing, which I don't think will happen. So the top four, as it stands right now, you've got Melbourne at 1. You've got Perth, Southeast Melbourne, Illawarra and Southeast Melbourne Phoenix are still tying for 3 and 4, depending on results. But that's pretty much set. The Kings have a chance if Southeast Melbourne lose by 80 or something along those. Sorry, Brisbane do actually if they lose by 80, so it's not going to happen. So the top four is pretty much set. Kings missed out by 1 game. My MVP pick, I have Bryce Cotton as the MVP, even though he got injured. My runner-up is Nathan Sobey. I think he had a fantastic year. I don't know if you know, but Bryce Cotton's out for the year. So really hurts Perth's chances. I don't think they'll do much in the finals without Bryce. So he's out. He's done some damage to his quad. Coach of the year, I've got Brian Goorjian with the runner-up Simon Mitchell. Brian Goorjian obviously taking over the Illawarra Hawks, getting them from last place to a finals berth. Pretty good turnaround in 1 year. Simon Mitchell did a pretty good job with getting Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, who are a new franchise, only been in the league a couple of years, to their first final series. Most improved player, Froling at the Illawarra Hawks. I think he had a fantastic year under Brian Goorjian. And then Hunter at the Sydney Kings, who was my former teammate, my backup last season. He's had a really good year. His arrow really went up. Sixth man of the year, I have Scotty Hobson with Melbourne United. There weren't really any other candidates. Now, Scotty Hobson, who you'd be familiar with, played in the league for a while. He's not really a sixth man. He's a starting caliber player, but their rosters, they've just spent a shitload of money on their roster and they have the luxury of bringing him off the bench, and he's had a fantastic year, and no one's numbers are close to his. My championship pick is Melbourne United. I don't see them losing. I think they're too stacked, too much talent, great mix of offense and defense, and I think they'll be holding the trophy at the end of the season. So that's the NBL wrap. Look forward to seeing how that all goes. Stats, Pro, we've got a few. One you sent me. Per Elias Sports, there has only been one starting lineup in the last 40 postseasons taller than the Dallas Mavericks were the other night. 2003 Mavs lineup. Check this lineup out. I think I remember this lineup. Sean Bradley, 7'6". Ralph LaFrance, 7'1". Dirk Nowitzki, 7 foot. Michael Finley and Steve Nash. Can you imagine that in today's game, Pro?
Unbelievable. Yeah, you'd be fired and you could never work again if you had a lineup like that. The GM and the coach. But yeah, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, hey, look, that's a legit stat, right? I mean, it's the tallest lineup in 40 postseasons. So yeah, they did put a big fucking lineup in with Boban and
Porzingis.
They had Boban, Powell, and Porzingis in the game, maybe? Or am I fucking that up?
No, I think it was Hardaway. Well, it helps when Porzingis and Boban are, Boban's 7'4", 7'5", isn't he? And then you got Porzingis 7'1", 7'2", so that's half your lineup right there. But yeah, the Mavs one, the old school Mav one was interesting because you could do it because LaFrance and Nowitzki both shot 3, so kind of still somewhat space the floor, but defensively would be just a train wreck.
Nightmare, fucking nightmare.
I think that was
I'll tell you what,
that was their zone. That was their zone era too, though. I think they played a shitload of zone back then. Yeah,
that Boban boy, like going back to him. I'll tell you what, like people want to laugh this and that. That guy is first of all ready to play. Like they could sit him 20 straight games and he's ready to go, which is fucking unbelievable. No one says a bad word about the guy, and every time he plays, he's fucking productive. It's people think it's like
while smiling.
Yeah, while smiling. Like when they put Taco Fall in with the Celtics, like, look, I don't want us to say that any pro player, NBA player is a joke or whatever, but like people like laugh at him, and I get it, like because he had no success. Boban actually could get into a game offensively and defensively and fuck your game up in a good way for a team. Mm-hmm. It's it was interesting.
He's a big human
being. He's a big human being.
He's got a great touch.
But I think, the Clippers figured it out though. Like, he's not a shot blocker. He clogs the paint up, but he's not a shot blocker. Get him to move. The more he moves, especially like up and down. He'll get tired a little bit, and then you could get to the basket. With Porzingis, all you got to do when he's in pick and roll is fucking, just give him a little bit of a body shove or a little fucking, a little shoulder or whatever, and he's gonna, he'll budge. But it was cool seeing that lineup though. Yeah, for sure.
The next one we discussed, the Dallas LA Clippers series, the first playoff series in the 7-game era where all home teams have lost every game. So I had to go back. I found a 5-game series in 1984 Pro, back when the first round was 5 games.
3 out of 5.
Eastern Conference, New Jersey versus Philly. 1984, New Jersey won 3-2 with a road team won every game. So that was a 5-game series. So it has been done in a 5-gamer, but a 7-gamer. We'll see if history can be made. That stat will... If the Clippers lose tomorrow, that stat will never be repeated, in my opinion. I don't think you'll ever see a 7-game series home team lose every game again. So it's a pretty cool stat.
Yeah, for sure. It's been cool to watch. It's been weird to watch, but it's been cool. But like, I don't know. You can't explain it. And if I'm a gambler on that fucking series,
just like I'm
bro, jump off a fucking bridge because there's no fucking way. I mean, like, if you get out of the business, do something else, because I'll tell you what, that will put you out of the business quick betting on that series, because you have no idea who's going to show up when. Yeah, it's nuts.
It's tough. And NBA is tough to bet on in general, but that series, you pull your hair out. The last one, look, I know we give LeBron James a lot of shit, mainly for his off-court escapades, but I think this was a good stat. LeBron James has been eliminated in the first round of the playoffs for the first time in his 15-year playoff career. Pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive, especially in those Cleveland teams that he had, because the Miami and the LA and when he went back to Cleveland, they were sort of stacked in his favor. Where, people don't understand how bad those fucking teams where he wilted to the finals were. With I'm not saying they weren't
year, right? The Spurs year,
yeah,
when they got swept. Yeah,
he never had a number 2. Like, he never had a pure number 2 on his team until he went
Larry
to Miami.
Hughes, maybe was it Larry Hughes? Who was that? I think
Larry Hughes was probably the best player. He had Shaq on the way down. He had Gauskas.
Drew Gooden, but I'm talking about
Drew Gooden.
That first run where they went to the finals and played. They got swept by the Spurs 4-0. I think his number 2 was Larry Hughes. I think. Dante West was there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Larry Hughes. Don't get me wrong. It's just as far as a number 2, like, Larry was a prototypical third best player in a team, but he never really had a true number 2. And I was texting with somebody. I don't even know if it might have been our group chat where I said, without Anthony Davis, when what he was trying to do in that Phoenix series without Davis, it looked a lot like the shit he was trying to pull in Cleveland by literally wilting a team almost by himself. But he just didn't have the talent. But that's a pretty cool stat though, to be able to get out of the first round, because look at Dallas. Like, Dallas, if they lose tomorrow, it's 10 years about not getting out of the first round, and they're a championship. They're a championship team in 11 with a coach that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's and you can't get out of the first round in 10 years. That's a tough deal, especially if you're in the West. Now, he's in the East, a little different, but still, like, getting out of the first round consistently like that, it's pretty impressive. To make it that, almost to that effect is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. I like that. I think most of the stats are pretty good. Let's go fact and fake news. What do you have?
Bogues, shocker. I'm going to be self-deprecating today. The Boomers will have Pro name their squad so they can pick the opposite and win the gold medal. It better be a fucking fact. But what do you say?
Yeah, it's fact. It's fact.
Nice.
Well, you picked your squad. I mean, you're on Jock Landale's hit list. But yeah, you picked your squad. So we'll see how that goes. But they have an interesting off-season coming up and prep and short turnaround. And as we know, it'll be interesting to see if Ben Simmons puts his hand up. So looking forward to it. Yeah,
it'll be pretty cool. Fuck, I hope it's fact. I'd love to do that. Just pick the opposite, man. I'll tell you what, though. What can I do with Lawndale to get him back on his good graces? Is there anything? You know the fucking guy. Obviously, I don't. But, what can I do to get back into sort of his good graces where he's not going to try to pick me off at some point in his life?
Nah, he's all right. He's all right. He'll be fine. He's a big boy. He's a country boy, so he's, grew up on a farm and stuff. He loves having a little bit. He loves bantering back and forth. So I think just keep giving him more shit. We'll do wonders.
Sweet. Hey, are we going to get on? By the way, are we going to get on fucking Ingles? I just read that Ingles got a fucking podcast.
Yeah, not doing it much lately, but yeah, he does. He does.
Bro, what the fuck? Like, come on, can't we get in?
Yeah, we can get in.
We're one of his biggest supporters.
Has he responded to your DM yet?
You know what happened? I think I tried to group him and you into the DM on the. I know nothing about social media, obviously.
It wasn't me because I didn't get it. So you probably added the wrong. No, the wrong Andrew.
No. It says that you can't be added. So I don't know what the fuck I'm doing on my fucking, on my fucking sidekick from 2002. But I think that was it because when I hit Ingles the other day, he hit me right back and we were going back and forth. But the fucker's got a podcast and he was busting my balls about how he's not invited to Oz. Or yours? How about the fuck we get invited to his?
I don't think his is a basketball one, pro. I think it's more like a general life podcast kind of thing. So,
forget it. Hey, he doesn't want us then. Fuck that. I take that back.
You can do diet advice and I can do social media advice.
There you go. Fuck. All right, I take that back. All right, both Jason Kidd and Chauncey Billups will be head coaches next season.
I got fake news on this one. I don't think Chauncey will be there yet. As you said earlier, I think the inexperience, is the one that gets him. I think he, almost needs to join a bench or do something just to get his foot in the door. I think he's very, very high IQ, but I think there are some reservations of hiring guys out of a commentary booth for obvious reasons, bro. Something that I've lived in real life, and I think that's a concern. Now, look, could a small market just take a flyer, Indiana, someone like that, and just say, you know what, let's just take a risk, maybe, but not both of them. I think Jason Kidd gets a job for sure off that Lakers bench. Chauncey probably 2 or 3 years, so I'll say fake news.
Yeah, I'd say fake news, but here's what I do predict, and of course it's not going to happen because I'm fucking awful at it, but I will predict this. Remember, he did say no to the Cleveland GM job. A couple of years ago, he said no to it when they offered because it wasn't big enough for him, whatever, or not enough money, or it wasn't big enough for him. I bet that the Orlando Magic will have him either as a finalist or like in the final 4 of candidates after the first round. They will interview him. He'll get a ton of interviews this year, guaranteed.
Final 4 for Orlando? Fuck, they might not even get 4 candidates interviewing, bro.
Mickey Mouse for sure would. I'd work there in a hot beat.
Brooke Lopez Lopez will interview. And Brooke and Robin Lopez, because it's close to Disneyland, they'll definitely interview.
Dude, those two fuckers are the best. Because, every time I went because I go to Disney World, when I was in the league, we went every All-Star break. And I would see those two fuckers every year on like somewhere. And every time in like layup lines and shit, I'd be talking about favorite rides and shit like that. But here I am, and I'm in fucking, where were we? Epcot Center. And we were in like the United States Pavilion, and these two fuckers are in the corner just sitting, chilling with like 15 people. I love those two. But anyway, I bet that he drops out. Either they offer him the job and he drops out because he wants a bigger job, or he just drops out because, he wants to hold out for a better job.
Keep holding on. Beggars can't be choosers, man. You can't, I don't think he gets a big franchise job. Like, a Boston or LA. I think he's got to go the small market route first.
I really wouldn't. Yeah, I really wouldn't. I'm with you. Like, the experience would be big. But for him, I think that, like, taking over a team like that, seeing that you can do the job, and then trying to move from there is a lot better. Because look, Bogues, in my opinion, like, what happens if he says no? Say the Clippers lose in the second round this year. Kawhi leaves or somebody packs up and goes. And then the Clippers aren't what they used to be. They're not winning they don't get to the championship or whatever. And, like, he's not sort of, he's sort of not, like, in the forefront, because I think that the idea of taking the Clippers assistant job is they win a championship, and you know how that is. If you win a championship, you're not getting the head coach, but you're starting to get the assistants for other teams. You saw that happen with Indiana. So, but what happens if he says no to Orlando, and then the Clippers just sort of stalemate, and they're just okay, second round out, second round out, second round out, whatever. Like, that might hurt him. There's only 30 of these jobs, and I think assistants can attest to this. Like, sometimes you're hot and people think you're going to get jobs. And then like all this stuff happens where the wrong guy gets fired. He's got more experience than you. And then they get jobs over you. You thought you were going to get it this year. And then the team that you're coaching with goes in the shitter. and then like you're not that hot name anymore, and then all these other people get hired over you, and then
I think Chauncey's almost already there. I think Chauncey's window. Yeah. He had a huge window, like you said, when he turned, when he thought he was too good for certain jobs. Like
there's only 30 of these fucking jobs. I think it's tough.
So you're fake news then?
Yeah, fake news.
Yeah.
Long story short. Short story long. Third question. Joel Embiid's injury will cost us Sixers a chance at a title run.
I think fact. I think he needs to be beyond 100% healthy for them to have any chance. Like if he has to be nursed to get through this next series and then the series after, if they get that far, and he's limping into a finals, even if they get there. I mean, they need him at MVP caliber, Joel Embiid, to have a chance to even get there. They're not the favorite to come out of the East, even though they're the 1 seed. Brooklyn obviously is, and I mean they need him. They need him healthy, mentally, physically, feeling good, and get back to those MVP numbers in the regular season to have any chance to continue to progress in the playoffs. Yeah,
I agree. It's fact. Look, the NBA, especially when you get to the playoffs. And that's why I said coaching is almost irrelevant, because it's talent. This ain't the movie Hoosiers where you could be like the last seeded fucking team and then get to the finals, the state championship in Indiana anymore. Like, you need talent in the NBA. And especially when you're getting late rounds in the playoffs, if you're like, hey, look, if, no offense, but maybe if even Harris went out, like, you might have a chance, right? Still, for them. But if either Simmons or Embiid gets hurt, especially Embiid because of his offensive firepower, like, that's a huge loss. And you saw it in the Lakers series. Like, I think everybody had the Lakers winning if those two guys were healthy, especially when they were rolling, when Chris Paul hurt his shoulder. Like, no one was picking the Phoenix Suns. Nobody. And then Davis goes out, and you just can't replace that firepower. And with Embiid out, I think it's fact. I think they have very little to no chance. If he can't go, I don't see them. I see them maybe getting past this round, but I think they won't get past the conference final.
Yeah, and you can tread water with a star down. All good teams can. We did it with in 2016 when we went to the finals. We played Portland. Steph did his I think it was his knee against was it Houston the series before in the first round, and we played Portland and still got them out of there. I think they got one game out of us, and then Steph came back for game 5. So you can sustain it for short periods. You can sustain not having a Joel Embiid for 2 or 3 games in a playoff series, or maybe 4. But the closer it gets to the finals, and the deeper you get, to do it for 8, 9, 10, 11 games, that'll eventually get found out. So they need Joel healthy, and I hope he is, because I think it'd be a great series to see if they get through this round, whoever they play, most likely Brooklyn. I think it'd be a good series of 3 perimeter talents versus a potential Hall of Fame interior talent. I'd love to see that. But Q&As, we didn't get to these last week because Sherwood Strauss was just, giving us quote after quote, and Pro was hanging shit on him, and we got lost in the shuffle there. But a few good ones this week, Pro. Yeah, what do you got? Yeah,
Strauss thought he was getting paid by the hour last week, by the way. No one fucking told him. But go ahead.
Yeah, it's like when you get a 1-hour massage and it goes for 3 hours and they're like, oh, but you take it anyway.
Yeah.
Hi, Andrew and Pro. I've been loving the podcast. Haven't missed an episode yet. Also a huge Knicks supporter. Well, unlucky for you because they're gone. Chuck Jasicki to watch game 2. So the guy took a sick day. Chuck Jasicki is a sick day, Pro. My question, watching live NBA games is great, but also frustrating. I've had my missus get pissed at me because I say I just want to watch the end of this game. It's only got 5 minutes left, and then the 5 minutes end up taking 15 minutes with late game fouls and timeouts. What can they do to stop late game fouls? And could they limit timeouts in the entire last quarter to 2 per team, or would that burn teams out down the stretch? Feel free to shorten this, but just wanted your thoughts. And that's Josh from Adelaide. Look, I think it's an issue. There is an issue the NBA has looked at. I mean, the Hacker Shack rule was tweaked because of that, where they had teams that were hacking guys early in quarters. They noticed that TV viewership was changing the channel. People got sick of watching it. And look, the games at the end of an NBA game, that's just something you got to deal with. There is a bit of a chess game there with timeouts, so I wouldn't really shorten them. But Bro, I don't really think there's many changes you can make in a late game situation. They're just, with the foul game and you kind of want it to run smoothly, but at the same time, that's going to take more time. But you want that late game situation where someone can hit a buzzer beater too, and that's the beauty of that late game. If you take away the fouling game. If a team's down, let's say 5 and they're intentionally fouling, which in FIBA is hard to do because if they deem the foul intentional, which generally is when you're trying to hack, it's 2 on the ball back. So it's harder to do in international. But I like the drama of a late game situation, timeouts back and forth, advance the ball, and then someone steals a game on the buzzer. How do you see all that, bro?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not really, I mean, they keep trying to tweak, and look, they do the competition committee meetings and things like that. They're always trying to find different ways and new ways to do things. But I agree with you. I mean, believe me, it is boring, especially when these things get drawn out. But I don't think there's a lot. I like the last second shot. Obviously, everybody else does too, and the drama of that. And, but there's not really a lot they can do. They'll probably come up with some new things, as the years go on, but I don't think there's really a lot that you can do to it. Plus, like with the not only the challenges, but just trying to, go to the film. I think they just want to try to get everything right, and they get their the ear to the ground with trying to make it best they can for the fans. I think teams scoring 179 points a game is good enough, and giving up 176, but like in the last couple of minutes, I agree. There's really not a lot you could do.
Yeah, there isn't. And that's the problem with the live game. Well, one thing I have liked the NBA have done, I don't know if you could catch much of them, but the condensed games, they're pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't have a chance to watch a live game, you get home from work, what they do now is ESPN do it. They condense a full game within an hour. So they take out all the bullshit back and forth, the reviews, all that stuff, and it's just the game. And that appeals to some people because they just want to watch basketball. They don't want to do all the in-betweens, but the only problem with that is you can't do that live. So if you're watching the live product, you just got to deal with the bullshit along the way. And they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. As Pro said, if back in the day when there wasn't reviews and it's cost teams games, playoff series, and championships at times because there was a wrong call by a ref, you have fans carrying on about it for the whole next year and talk show radios and radio shows and all that kind of stuff. So they've tried to fix that, and now it's the opposite. It's slowed the game down as a TV product. Even live, sometimes you're sitting there, it's become football-like where, there's a stoppage and a commercial and a review and fans are in the crowd like, what the hell's going on? So that's just something you got to deal with if you want that room for error gone. So thanks for that question, Josh. Next one, hello, Bogues and Pro. I'm Lockie. I have 2 Qs from a player who played against him, a coach, and whatever. Well, this was for last week, whatever your guest does, but we didn't get to our question. So we'll just say from a player who played against him and a coach that coached against him, which is you. Why do people not like Russell Westbrook? Players not like him, KD, fans, media. I'm not a fan, but curious nonetheless. And then you had one more question, which was Homicide said Nick Kyrgios could play in the NBL 1 level, which is our G League. Is that true? And if so, would it be like J. Cole in the Basketball Africa League? First off, I would not take anything that Corey Homicide Williams says seriously. It's very under-researched. Kyrgios loves his basketball, can play a little bit, but I think a little bit disrespectful to the guys at NBL 1 level because they still are semi-professionals, and I think it'd be similar to that J. Cole type thing. I think Kyrgios could be out there and hit a shot every now and then, but to compete at a high level like that is tough. But how do you see the Westbrook thing?
He's an alpha dog, man. Like, he's a competitive dude. He's emotional. He doesn't fuck around, doesn't play mind games. He just he's all in your face 24/7. So for some people, especially today's player, it's not the easiest guy to like. He's flamboyant. They got that fashion shit that he does too. Like, it might set people the wrong way, but he's just an aggressive guy. And that's not for everybody. Some people don't like that, and I understand that. Teammates, same thing. Like, he's not afraid to speak his mind. And he's all competitive and he's all business. And yeah, sometimes that could probably be taken in the wrong way. And I could see that people didn't like him. Like I said, Kobe said he was the most competitive player that he's ever played against in his whole career. There hasn't been obviously besides MJ. He said he's the most competitive player he's ever played against in his whole career. And because he keeps coming at you and he keeps coming at you and he keeps coming at you. And he's a tough dude. And I could see that people sort of rubs that the wrong way. I'm sure you've had teammates, maybe not as talented, that was like that, but you probably ran into players like that. That was sort of the alpha dog, always yelling, always screaming, wanting to fight everybody 24/7, and just played like that. I could see why that happens. I love the guy. I mean, he's not a perfect player, but he does play hard and he competes and he doesn't lay down. It doesn't matter if he's up 30 or down 30. He's a competitive dude. And you need guys like that on your team, especially in these days. What are your thoughts on him, Bogues?
Oh, it's the same thing. He's a kill everyone mentality guy. So there are guys that won't like him. I mean, I don't think it's so much a stigma as everyone doesn't hate him. I think it's just they know, NBA players in the regular season don't want to get hit. They don't want to grind. They don't want to get on a loose floor and loose ball on the floor and scuff their knees in a regular season game. And he's a guy that will demand that from you. So I think there's something that goes within that as well. Like, damn, I'm playing Westbrook. This dude, man, like he's relentless, So I think that's a part of it. But I mean, he's a fiery dude. And from what I've heard off court, he's fantastic. But his public perception, his media, the way he handles himself, he's an aggressive win-at-all-costs guy, and he doesn't give a shit what you think about him. And that's frowned upon in our league, unfortunately. Whereas, if he was the political, smile, kissing babies, shaking hands, then, we call him fake. So I'd rather him be on the other extreme, in my opinion.
Yeah. So you're saying you're going to downgrade homicide to manslaughter and say that, it's just that was sort of a little bit off, that guy can't play in the NBL?
Well, Corey Homicide Williams is a street ball legend. Self-proclaimed.
I've heard about him.
He's a street baller, but he's a commentator over here that just yells and screams and doesn't really do a whole lot of research about numbers and whatnot. Like the other day, I'll give you an example. Illawarra's playing. Who were they playing the other night? Sydney.
So I'm going to call him. If you're not, let's use a new word, the new term. If you're not vibing with the way he does things, I'm going to downgrade him to. I'm not even going to call him homicide anymore. I'm calling him manslaughter. So go ahead. So manslaughter. He's saying what? The numbers are off on manslaughter?
No, I'll just give you an example. So I think it was the Kings. Oh, no, sorry. It was Illawarra played Perth, and he basically asked, Perth had the ball down 2. He asked if they would foul intentionally.
That's awesome.
And the other commentator's like, nah, they're not going to foul intentionally. They're up 2, man. Like, they'll give them 2 free throws. and then he replied something like, "Oh no, I'm just asking." It's like, just he's not a analytics X's and O's basic numbers guy. He's more of a guy you watch to hear some screaming and yelling and some passion, and that's what he does. That's his go-to. That's what he do. That's what he do. One of those commentators.
So basically, he's the pro of Australia. Then he does over there what I do on this podcast. Just scream, don't research anything, and just talk out of my ass.
Don't lower yourself to those levels, bro. Don't lower. At least you do. He's an influencer, though. So if you want to label yourself as an influencer pro, then by all means. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Kyrgios could play at a NBL level competitively a lot of minutes. I mean, maybe a J. Cole type role where he's getting a few minutes a game. But Kyrgios, I tell you what, bro, that guy loves basketball, man. I did that function with him at Bondi.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that guy just loves the game of basketball. He was sweating up a storm in his outfit, and then had to do photos after and change his clothes to do the photos, and crazy.
Yeah, that's what is he? Is he a player or is he an entertainer?
No, Nick Kyrgios, the tennis player. He's an Australian tennis player.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He's a dude that like flips out and like just loses his shit mid game and serves underhand sometimes. I'm not sure if you know who that is.
No, I was a huge '90s. What's it called? '90s tennis fan. Not as much today, except that if like Wimbledon final or French Open final or something like that. But so he's like the Jimmy Connors is a fucking nut like that would scream at people and stuff and go all nuts. But
he cops a bit of shit over here. Cops a bit of shit over here because he's a call it as he sees it. He has had some games where he's somewhat just threatened to quit because umpire was screwing him, and so he's one of those. He's a fiery character. I think he's great for tennis. I think he's great for tennis. Yeah. He's a love-hate guy, and he's a guy that whether you love or hate him, you buy a ticket to see him. So, but loves basketball, man. Like he just would not stop talking to me about basketball, and we need, especially in Australia and the NBL, trying to get him down to some games. We need guys like that because they help promote the sport. Next question. Thanks for that one, Lockie. Next one is your first day in the Bay Area after the Monte Ellis trade. What transpired, and when was the difference when you started to see fans change their perception of you? That's from HKP. So when I got traded there, pro, was not a fan-friendly decision by all means. I mean, Monte Ellis was the fan favorite, even though they sucked. He was the fan favorite because he dropped 30, 40 a night. Small guy, electrifying, fun to watch. The elephant in the room was that, Steph Curry was right next to him and not really getting a chance to shine, essentially. Monte was a guy that, his usage was the most on the team. He needed the ball. He kind of felt like he'd backed up a lot of those old veterans, Steven Jackson and whatnot back in the day, and he finally got his opportunity, and it was his team, as they say in the NBA. And so I got there, and Joe Lacob, I was hurt at the time, got there mid-season, and still remember they did a jersey retirement for Chris Mullin the week after or basically 5 days after I got traded there. So I ended up going to that game, and Joe Lacob had to go up and give, he basically gave the speech about presenting the jersey. They booed him the whole time, man. Like it was pretty brutal. You felt bad for Joe Lacob. You felt bad for Chris Mullin because it was his night. But the fans just booed every time he talked based on that trade. So it was safe to say they weren't happy with the trade. But I mean, what transpired, the rest was history. I think once they saw kind of what I brought, just with some toughness in the paint, shot blocking, screen setting, just doing stuff that no one had really done for them for a number of years, the appreciation started to grow. And I think the fans now realize that was a no-brainer move, even though at the time, an individual player that was fun to watch got moved on, and now the team is, in a position where they've had a bunch of championships and rebuilt the right way. So that was an interesting process, bro.
Yeah, it's one of those things, Bogues, that where like, especially if you don't watch anyone else play, like if you just watch your team, and they obviously weren't watching the Milwaukee Bucks all that much, I would assume. And then, I remember Monte, Don Nelson gave him his chance in Golden State. I think I had him on fantasy that year where he was off the coach before, didn't really play him. And I think Don Nelson was the one who sort of gave him his go, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am, but I could see why they really liked him. They probably didn't see you play a lot. And then usually it happens this way. When they play for somebody else, you don't really like them. They play for you, and then you start seeing some value. I could see that happen. And plus, you're not a flashy player. He was.
Yeah, I get it.
See why.
I got it totally.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a highlight guy. Tried to win games and play my role with whatever I needed to do. So I understand the fans' frustration, but that completely backfired on most of those people, which is pretty funny. Within a year, it was, that crowd was then rocking and going crazy. But that's a part of pro sports. It's just something you have to deal with. Like I was, help motivate me a little bit to show what I can do. And I think Joe Lacob, with his $500 million purchase to $10 billion valuation, has also had a pretty good laugh about it as well. So it's all worked out for everyone.
No doubt.
All right, next one.
No doubt.
With the Australian basketball season winding down, a lot of talk is popping up about travel schedules. One team did 6 games in 11 days in 4 states. This seems excessive, but compared to the NBA, it's normal, although the NBA has private jets. Having played in college, NBA, and NBL, how do the travel loads compare between the different leagues, and how does travel affect the players? Is it something that players don't mind and only fans use as an excuse? Love the pod, mate. Keep speaking up. Ben from Perth in Australia. Look, the travel does take a toll. It's more the cross-country flights for me in the NBA that killed me. Like, I remember one game, back when Atlanta was balling and they had those 4 or 5 All-Stars and we were balling in the West, we were kind of the 2 number 1 seeds from each conference, and we were flying out to Atlanta to play them. So it was a pretty big game. And they put us on it was basically a cross-country flight. So the way it usually works is the NBA won't send you all the way coast to coast. They'll send you to like the Midwest, and you'll slowly make your way out to the either coast, so you can, not kill yourself with time zone changes. But they put us on a flight, San Francisco to Atlanta, 10 a.m. takeoff. We got to our hotel room basically at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. with the time difference, and then played that next night. And I was still in the Bay Area that next night. I don't know where the hell I was. It was like jet lagged, fatigued. So it does take its toll. That's just the perils of the business. The NBL is a little bit better, although it is commercial. So sometimes whatever the airlines, you get a cancelled flight, weather, you're kind of stuck. Whereas in the NBA, there's a bit more freedom with your own plane. And college for us was pretty tough at times as well, because it was commercial, and we'd be going to a lot of sometimes those smaller schools would kill you because you'd have to take 2 or 3 flights. But now, some colleges have private jets from what I understand. We didn't at the time, but they travel private or charter. But it is what it is. Back in the day before planes, NBA players were taking, buses and trains and whatever they could at times. So that's just the reality you have to deal with, bro.
Yeah, the travel is great in the NBA without question, but it gets tiring at times, especially with back-to-backs and sleep schedules. The Mavericks, like my last year or two, they would, I think you were with us too at the time, like whenever we played LA or on the like deep West Coast, we would stay the night instead of like finishing the game, flying out and getting back late, really late. Usually you just stay the night and spend the next day. I guess there's the argument, do you sleep in your own bed versus, sleep in your own bed, but you have to travel half the night to get to your own bed, or do you stay at a 5-star hotel's bed, and then fly out the next day? I was in the D League, Bogues, where we were doing commercial, having 6'9" guys, fucking middle seats on Southwest airline flights, getting up at 4:30 a.m. wake up calls. It's not. There are some travels that's pretty rough, man. But like NBA, it depends how you are as a sleeper. You might be a finicky sleeper. You may not care. People are banged up with injuries. It affects them at the end of the year.
Every team's different too. Every team's different.
Yeah.
So Scott Skiles was one that was, he was a fly home at all costs guy. What that means is, so if we played tonight wherever in LA and didn't play again until 4 nights later, he'd still want to fly home after the game to Milwaukee and get there at 2-3 in the morning and then be in our own bed and be resettled there. And the other part of his strategy, I believe, was he didn't want guys to be out all night. So he thought that after a game, most guys, and this is probably true, after a game, most guys can't get to sleep for 3-4 hours anyway. So you're going to bed late. So why not be on a plane, knock that dead time out, and then you're in your city, and then they're not out on the booze or whatever till 6-7 a.m. anyway. So there is a strategy to both ways. Steve Kerr and the Golden State Warriors got a sleep specialist in, and they recommended that we stay overnight, and also when we fly out to a city, we then started going straight to the arena to do a practice session off the plane, which I hated because my back would be so tight from the travel. But their thought was that it gets you moving, even though you feel like you're running in mud or dirt. It gets that out before the game the next day, and that kind of makes sense as well. And they have all these specialists for everything now. And I guess at the end of the day, it is the coach's call, and some like it, some hate it.
Yeah, like you said, it depends on the team, but I don't think there's a perfect way to do it, to be honest with you. I think it just sort of, you're always going to have 1 or 2 players, 3 players on a different type of schedule, and it's going to get impacted plus or minus on it. So, fuck it. You deal with it.
It is what it is.
It's better than taking a train, brother.
That's it, or a bus, yeah. All right, I want to finish with story time. So last week we spoke about unruly fans and some crazy shit that we've seen along the way. So I thought I'd discuss a few of these that I've got, and I don't know if you've got any that you've dealt with while on the NBA circuit. We've heard the baseball story 15 times, so you don't have to tell us that one again in your Jordan sweatsuit.
No, fuck that one.
But I've had a few. One of the craziest ones I had was we played the San Antonio Spurs. It was our first playoff run with the Warriors. We beat Denver in that first round series, played the Spurs the next year, and we should have won the first 2 games. We were up. I can't even remember what it was. We're up something like 8 points with a minute left in game 1 and ended up losing and then won game 2. So we should have won game 1. But I remember we lose game 1, like I think Ginobili hit something on the buzzer or close to. And we stayed in San Antonio the next couple of nights because we had game 2. And a Spurs fan followed our bus the whole way from the arena. Now, the Spurs arena is pretty far from downtown San Antonio or near any hotels. It's probably a good 20, 30-minute drive at times. It's in the middle of like just a random residential area, not the nicest area by any means, but that's where the AT&T Center is, if it's still called that. So some fan followed our car the whole way, 30 minutes, and would drive up and down our bus, honking the horn, flags out the window, flipping us off the whole drive, man, for 30 minutes. We're just like, what the hell is going on? Like, because, most guys are on the bus and their, headphones are on and they're not paying attention and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, this car just honking all the way to the hotel. We got to get off the bus and they're still yelling at us. So that was pretty crazy because our team security was like, shit, is something going to go down? But they were just some passionate, crazy ass fans that just wanted to do something silly. My rookie year, I ended up getting ejected from a game. I was frustrated, not playing well that whole month really, and I get ejected, and as I'm walking out, a fan leans over the stanchion abusing me, like, it's too late to show some passion now or something like that. And my first thought was to try and grab him by the collar and punch him in the face. And I was like, oh, shit, I can't reach him because he's too high up. Because I was like fuming.
Right.
I was like seeing red. And it was my home team, right? So that was my first foray into flipping a fan off. And it was a home fan of all fans. So
of course.
Ended up getting a $25K fine for that. And the last one I remember was autograph seekers. So with Brandon Jennings, his rookie year, he had that 55-point night. He was blowing up. His star was shining. And in Toronto, they're notorious for following your bus from the arena to the airport, because in Toronto, it's one of the few arenas in the league where you have to go through the commercial entrance to get to your flight.
Oh, the worst. Yeah.
Whereas, because you have to go through passport control and all that bullshit. Whereas in the NBA circuit, our bus literally drives onto the tarmac to the steps of our plane and we get on. So that's how it is for 29 teams. And then 30 in Toronto, you got to go through all that bullshit. So the fans would know this. So we walked through the commercial part and there was these autograph hunters just irking at Brandon Jennings, just like, oh, I'll sign. And he'd signed a few and then said, that's enough. Like, I'm done. And one guy just kept going at him, walking with him through security. And I was behind Brandon, just kind of letting it unfold. I'm like, dude, he doesn't want to sign, leave him alone. He's like, no, I need this sign. And he grabs Brandon by his backpack. And that was enough for me. So I basically just grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and just missiled him. Just gave me an excuse to throw the dude. And I'm just like, dude, like, don't put your hands on my teammate. And that's probably, the most interaction I've had with NBA fans that kind of went south or were a little strange, but that's kind of what you deal with on a daily basis. And the fact that I interact with them so much on a daily basis to only have 3 or 4 of these stories, I think isn't too bad. But I'm sure you've probably seen some shit before, just walking down hotel lobbies and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, you get all these crazy people trying to get autographs. I told you, like, sometimes I would go, not a lot, but sometimes I'd go out to eat with Doncic and I told you before, they're getting bad. Like, there's definitely going to be something that happens, like following guys to, following us to go out to eat and having to deal with that. It's a tough one. I'll give you a little bit of a funnier story, though. We were in New Orleans and we had this drunk fan, like, literally right behind our bench. And she was screaming in our ear, like, really bad. Like, literally, like, it's loudest fan I've ever heard. She was drunk off her ass, screaming behind. So it's me and Sham got our other player development coach at the time. And we were just like, we can't do anything about it. Can't put anything in your ear. You got to deal with it all game. Literally, my ears were bleeding. And I turn around and she's 2 rows behind us. And in one row, she's screaming in this little old lady's ear. And, like, I thought, I don't know how she stayed there the whole game. Nice lady. So I turned around after the game. I said, fuck this. I get out of my pocket. I got a $100 bill and I gave it to the old lady. I said, I apologize for dealing with what you had to deal with. And I just walked away. And yeah, the story sucked, but the old lady came up with $100. That's the only thing I got.
Yeah, I mean, it just never ends. I think some of these people just
they think they're part of it. Like, and I get it. Like, that's, you live for it. You're drinking a little bit, but, like, you're living for it, and they think they're part of it, and they want to banter back and forth. They just want a reaction out of anybody. Now, she wasn't really unruly as far as, like, talking smack or anything like that, and she was our fan. But, like, it's just, like, it gets to a point where you scream. I'm talking about loudest scream I ever heard for 48 minutes of an NBA game, 2.5 hours basically. And,
and that starts fights rough, in the crowd, not only the player fan aspect, and someone else says shut up on the old lady's behalf, and then they're drunk. But I'll tell you one guy, we have unruly fans, but the best one, do you remember the guy in Philadelphia with the whiteboard?
Yeah, the whiteboard, yeah.
Oh man,
he had some great
good.
stuff on the whiteboard.
He's good. So there's a guy in Philadelphia. He sits behind an old dude, probably 50, 60 years old, probably 60 years old. He brings his own little whiteboard, like just one of those A4, maybe A3 size whiteboards with a whiteboard marker. And when he sits behind the visiting bench, comes to most games, and he'll sit there. And as there's a timeout, all the bench players are kind of looped around the coach, so we're looking towards the crowd. He'll just write the funniest shit on that whiteboard. Yeah. Like he railed me for my beard, like having a hobo beard one time. He'll rail, like, I think Dirk got it one time when we were there with Dallas about his age, like, should be in retirement. Just really funny, quirky stuff.
Yeah.
borderline offensive, like banter offensive, but not derogatory in a way like this. He's not, and that's great. I love that kind of stuff. And you don't like it to be about you at times, but that guy's great because he's a spectacle within himself. He doesn't say a word, and then he'll draw whatever he draws or writes, and just holds it under his chin, staring at you. You're just like, this guy's nuts, and it's funny, right? Like that kind of stuff you love, but it's once it escalates and there could be an altercation or abuse, that's when you want to draw the line.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy things like, and actually a fan died at a Portland game. It was the same night that Wesley Matthews tore his Achilles for Portland, not for us yet. And a fan like across the court from our bench, like 15 rows up, died, had a heart attack, and a long-time season ticket holder. Like during our game, they had to grab her and they wheeled her across the court, and she died that night. I mean, you just see some crazy stuff sometimes in games, but the unruly fan thing is rough. You see, people throwing things, not as bad as Europe, of course, where they're throwing with firecrackers and stuff, but like it gets a little rough. That guy in Philly is fantastic with the whiteboard though. He writes some funny shit.
Yeah, that's probably you and I when we're 60.
Oh, without question.
Going to sporting games, but that wraps up episode 23. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, bro, for joining us. Like, subscribe at Hoop Consultants and at Rogue Bogues on all your social media platforms. Thanks.